Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today, we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Diana Garnica. On Saturday, May 6, 2017, a 17-year-old girl named Diana Garnica went out to meet her 40-year-old neighbor, Dario Suarez. As the day drew to a close, Diana did not return home. Her mother became concerned and tried to contact her, but was unable to reach her. After speaking with Dario, who gave no information about their encounter and claimed that he had not seen Diana that day, her mother became increasingly suspicious. Diana Garnica was born on March 30, 2000, in Argentina. Those who knew her, including friends and family, noted that she displayed maturity beyond her years. Diana was very responsible and enjoyed helping her family. A diligent student, she did well in school, but eventually had to drop out of school to help her family during the financial crisis. She made the difficult choice to drop out of school to find a job and help her parents. In addition, Diana has a boyfriend her own age. People also comment on her ability to protect herself. She knows how to keep her distance from rude or dangerous people. Diana is very friendly and is the second child in a family of 8 siblings. Later, her parents divorced, which was especially difficult for her, as she had deep feelings for her father. However, she maintained a close relationship with her mother. After the divorce, Diana's mother moved with all the children to a town in Alderates, Tucumán province. After settling into their new home, they got to know their closest neighbors, Dario Suarez and his family. Susana, Diana's mother, and her siblings formed a strong friendship with Dario's family, and they became so close that they treated each other like family. Susana often babysat Dario's children while they were away. Dario respected and loved Diana's family and treated her with great care, like his own sister. There was never any indication that Dario had inappropriate behavior towards Diana or her family, reflecting the deep trust and understanding between the two families. Diana went to work every morning and came home in the evening. Occasionally, she met members of her church community and spent time with her boyfriend and close friends. Unlike many girls her age, Diana did not like to dance and avoided discos and nightclubs. Those who knew her realized that she preferred to spend her free time at home. On May 6, 2017, Diana finished her work as usual and waited for her sister at the designated place so they could go home together, just like they did every day. When Diana got home, her neighbor Dario called her and asked if they could meet to buy an air conditioner as a surprise for his mother. He asked her to keep it a secret. However, after hanging up, Diana went to her mother's room and excitedly recounted the whole conversation, ignoring Dario's request to keep it a secret. She found it funny because it was still a long way from summer. In May, where she lived, the weather was quite cool and sometimes even cold. At that time, Diana did not suspect anything unusual and just told her mother that she would help Dario choose a gift. Diana had a very close relationship with her family and shared everything with them. On that unfortunate day, Dario sent Diana several text messages. He reminded her about the gift for her mother and emphasized that no one in her family should know about it, not her mother, father, siblings, or anyone else. Dario also asked Diana to keep their motorbike trip a secret. However, Diana read all of his messages but chose not to keep it a secret. She told her mother Susana everything. As a result, her mother was fully informed about the scheduled meeting between Diana and Dario. Diana left the house to wait for Dario at the bus stop. Hours passed, and finally, Dario returned home. Susana heard the sound of his motorbike and went out to check. Seeing Dario alone, she assumed that Diana had chosen to walk home alone. She thought that Dario's wife might be jealous. Therefore, Susana decided to wait a little longer, hoping that her daughter would come home soon. Time passed, and the girl still did not return. Worried, Susana went to see Dario to ask about Diana's whereabouts. Dario quickly claimed that he did not know where she was, saying that he had not seen her that day. This answer made Susana feel strange and suspicious because she knew that her daughter was supposed to meet Dario. Although he denied it, Dario offered to help by suggesting that he could use his motorbike to find Diana, assuming that she had just gone out for a walk. Diana's relatives called her several times, but soon realized that it was useless. She had left her phone at home while it was charging and could not answer any calls or messages. They decided to check her text message history and found every text message that Dario had sent to Diana that day. It was learned that Dario had asked Diana to help him buy a gift for his mother, which suggested that they had indeed met. One of Diana's brothers then decided to confront Dario about these messages, hoping to get him to admit that Diana was with him. When Dario noticed one of Diana's brothers approaching his house, he fled. Diana's father, who was divorced from her mother and lived on his own, learned of her disappearance and quickly arrived at the scene. The entire family then went to the police for assistance. At the police station, Diana's relatives explained in detail what had happened and showed several text messages that implicated Dario in their daughter's disappearance. For the family, Dario was the only suspect. However, the police dismissed their concerns and did not take their complaint seriously. Instead, they suggested that the family look for common gathering places for young people. Diana's parents were disappointed with the police response and insisted that if their daughter went anywhere, it was only between home and work, occasionally going to church. They believed that there were only a few places where she could have gone. In addition, the family was certain that on that day, she had met her neighbor Dario, but he had returned without her and had begun to avoid them. Despite this information, the police informed Diana's relatives that they could not file a missing person report because they did not have enough personnel and resources to search for her. They advised the family to go to another police station with patrols to begin the search immediately. However, as the family left the station feeling hopeless, they were surprised to see a patrol car parked at the entrance with 7 police officers nearby, relaxing and chatting. The problem was that they had the resources to conduct a search for the missing Diana, but they chose not to. Considering the situation, Diana's family decided to continue looking for Dario, who had tried to run away. They went to the brick factory where Dario was supposed to work. When Diana's father got out of the car, he noticed that Dario's entire family had gathered near the factory building for some unknown reason. This was unusual, especially since it was 2 a.m. on a Sunday morning. Inside the factory, the lights were still on and the kilns were still running, even though they had not been used for months. Diana's father asked Dario's family where he was. They replied that he had gone to the toilet. However, Diana's relatives soon discovered that Dario had actually gone deep into the mountains and had no intention of returning. Diana's family tried to talk to his wife and mother. Unfortunately, no one could provide any information about Dario's situation. Diana's family was suspicious and asked questions. Why was Dario's entire family at the factory that night if none of them knew what had happened? Why was the factory, which had been shut down for a long time, suddenly operating early on a Sunday morning? Frustrated, Diana's family approached the judiciary and tried to file a complaint with the prosecutor's office. They expressed their concerns by going to the police the day before, and the police assured them that information about Diana's disappearance would be passed on to the prosecutor's office. However, when they arrived, no one at the office knew about the situation, possibly because no official statement had been filed. As a result, the family had to start the complaint process all over again. After filing a new complaint, Prosecutor Claudio Bonari went to the scene of the incident. Claudio instinctively sensed that something was amiss, so he quickly began organizing searches. He started at the home of the suspect, Dario Suarez, and then moved to the brick factory where Dario worked. The prosecutor discovered that the factory's kiln had been operating the night before, which raised some disturbing thoughts. Claudio later reported that he faced unexpected challenges during the investigation that day. The judges from the investigative court and his office secretary were not present, which prevented them from issuing a search warrant in time. Prosecutor Claudio therefore decided to conduct searches without the necessary warrant. He began his investigation by searching Dario's home and the factory. The prosecutor's main theory was that Dario might have kidnapped Diana and assaulted her. According to this theory, the factory could be the crime scene where Dario dumped the body. However, the prosecutor also considered the possibility that Dario did not act alone. He suspected that other people, including Dario's wife, mother, factory owner, and employees who were present that night, might have been involved in the crime. A second investigation was launched. The theory was that Diana might have been kidnapped and possibly handed over to the mafia or human traffickers. This theory did not come about by accident. In fact, in Diana's family, it was discovered that Dario was involved with very dangerous people who kidnapped young girls to then sell them or transfer them to bars and nightclubs. A girl on Facebook claimed that a man named Christian had handed Diana over to a human trafficking group. She detailed on her personal page how Diana was put in a nice car and mentioned an envelope of money that was supposed to be for Christian. However, this so-called witness later confessed that she had lied to blame her ex-boyfriend for everything after he left her. This situation required the prosecutors and their team to thoroughly review the documents they had for the investigation. As a result, significant resources were wasted on this false lead, hindering the actual investigation. Meanwhile, Prosecutor Claudio chose to pursue the case under the hypothesis of illegal detention and possible murder. His main theory was supported by the efforts of sniffer dogs who searched the area, as well as firefighters from Punta Arena, who assisted in the police-led searches and raids. The dogs repeatedly followed Diana's scent, leading them in the same direction. This gave them a clear path that she would have taken that day. The path started from Diana's house, then to Dario's house, and continued from there to the brick factory. The police therefore focused their search on both Dario's house and the factory. At the factory, the dogs discovered a pendant with the letter D and a belt with traces of blood. During a search of the homes of Dario and his relatives, police confiscated their cell phones and examined their text message histories. A manuscript discovered at Dario's home confirmed that his relatives were involved in covering up the crime. Regarding the brick factory, the prosecutor conducted 3 searches there, believing that the final crucial evidence would be discovered to clarify what happened on May 6. Claudio was convinced that all the answers would be found at the site. Therefore, on May 13, the police, together with forensic experts, returned to the factory for the 3rd time in a week to re-examine the furnace that had attracted the dogs' attention. In the furnace, they found the remains of teeth and a piece of surgical steel. A month later, on June 18, Prosecutor Claudio informed the parties concerned of some disturbing news. The evidence found at the brick factory had mysteriously disappeared. As a result, the prosecutor declared the case secret, which meant that neither the parties concerned nor the media would receive any further updates. An internal investigation was launched involving 10 police officers. 7 were released while 3 faced charges. The case has been investigated in secret since then. There was speculation that the envelopes containing the evidence may have been damaged, leading to the loss of evidence. However, Prosecutor Claudio and Diana's family were not convinced by this explanation. They believed that those involved in their daughter's disappearance were powerful and dangerous people who could manipulate the situation to hide any information. Dario later turned himself in to the police. What was most surprising was that Dario arrived with a highly paid and clearly financially beyond his means private attorney. This was no ordinary attorney. He was a top specialist, often hired by the wealthy and influential. He was not a public defender, but someone with a proven track record of successfully defending clients involved in questionable activities. Dario arrived with this attorney, much to Diana's family's surprise. Everyone knew that Dario could not afford such legal representation. In fact, Diana's parents had struggled to raise enough money to hire an attorney to help investigate their daughter's case. Dario's ability to hire such an expensive attorney raised suspicions about his involvement in a serious situation and showed that he had connections with powerful people. Dario's lawyer ordered him to exercise his right to silence and confirm only what had already been proven by the accusing party. In particular, the text messages that he exchanged with Diana on the day of her disappearance. The lawyer also instructed that the initial evidence gathered by Prosecutor Claudio be dismissed, as the searches had been conducted without proper authorization. Of the 12 people initially suspected and detained in connection with the case, all were eventually released, leaving only Dario in custody. As there was no further evidence linking him to the crime beyond what had already been gathered, the police were unable to make any progress in solving the case or bring further charges. As a result, the investigation stalled and Dario was eventually released on bail. In January 2018, after a series of disturbing events, Diana's sister was attacked by a woman. Diana's sister reported the incident to the police, who refused to accept her complaint. Like the initial complaint against Diana, this one failed to attract the attention of the police. Soon after, more puzzling events took place. Diana's family received small sums of cash from unidentified people on 3 separate occasions, accompanied by notes that appeared to have been written by Diana. These messages gave the family hope that she was still alive. One note read, "Mom, I'm Diana. I'm alive. They're holding me. Please come get me." Another message conveyed a similar plea. 3 banknotes were sent to a lab for analysis. 2 of them tested negative, showing that the handwriting did not match the notes in Diana's notebook. The 3rd banknote initially tested positive, showing that it matched Diana's handwriting. However, when retested, the results were negative, indicating that the handwriting was not hers. This case is indeed full of inexplicable details. First, the evidence found disappeared. Then these notes appeared. The identity of the handwriting remains unknown. The discovery of these notes has rekindled the family's hope for their daughter's return and led them to form new theories about her possible location. Diana's parents still believe she is alive, while they feel the police are unwilling to pursue her case. In May 2019, 2 years after Dario Suarez was arrested for a crime he was suspected of but had no evidence to prove, Dario was released under the Argentine Penal Code. 2 years and 4 months after Diana went missing, the federal court decided to close her case due to insufficient evidence. Currently, the main theory of the prosecution is that Diana was kidnapped and is likely the victim of violence and murder. Throughout the investigation and searches were carried out at various locations, and many witnesses were interviewed, but no one provided clear information about what happened. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Mario Biondo. Mario Biondo was born in Italy, one of 3 sons of Santino Dale Sandra and Giuseppe Biondo. The family was known for its friendliness and generosity. From an early age, Mario was very creative and loved photography. He showed his talent and knowledge, eventually becoming a member of the technical support team in television. Throughout his life, Mario was active in volleyball, participating in many team competitions. This experience taught him valuable lessons about team spirit, trust, and accepting defeat. His good looks and charm attracted many admirers. Then Mario met Raquel Sanchez Silva, a talented young woman from Spain. After graduating from journalism in 1994, she aspired to become a television presenter. Raquel benefited from her mother Matilda's connections in the industry, but her intelligence and talent were already known to everyone. The couple met in Honduras in 2011, where the Mario worked as a cameraman and Raquel was a presenter on the reality TV show Celebrity Island. Raquel quickly fell in love with him. According to her friends, she expressed her feelings openly, which was very unusual for her. Fortunately, Mario felt the same way and they started dating. Despite the age difference, everyone admired this smart and talented couple, and they became local celebrities, with the public closely following their lives. In June 2012, the Mario and Raquel got married in Sicily. The wedding was a classic, beautiful event by Italian standards, celebrated with grandeur for several days. Locals believed that such a wedding would lead to a happy and long-lasting marriage. Unfortunately, this did not happen. Just a year later, on May 29, 2013, a tragic event occurred. Mario and Raquel had a small argument, a common problem for young couples, but they resolved it through reconciliation. At that time, the couple had been married for almost a year and were living in Raquel's apartment in central Madrid. Raquel needed to go to her hometown of Plasencia for work, so at around 8:30 p.m. that same evening, they said goodbye to each other in the garage before she left. The trip had been planned in advance and everything seemed to be going according to schedule. After Raquel left, Mario was alone at home. Mario made 3 phone calls. One was to his sister Emanuela, who lived in Sicily. He shared his ambitious plans for future television projects, which included preparing a new show and eventually traveling around the world with Raquel to create a travel blog. He also made 2 other calls, one of which may have been to a drug dealer. That evening, the Mario went to an ATM near his home at around 10 p.m., where he withdrew 110 euros. However, the money was never found in his home, suggesting that he had spent it all. About an hour later, a neighbor saw Mario at the entrance to his apartment building. She noticed that he was behaving unusually and ignoring her, which was out of character for him as he was usually very polite. He seemed upset, but there was no immediate cause for concern. Mario called his wife, and they talked until midnight, then continued their conversation via text messages. They mainly discussed their current situation, especially their difficulties conceiving. Raquel, 40, desperately wanted a baby but was unable to get pregnant, which worried both of them. Mario suspects that he may be infertile due to a disease he previously suffered from. Later, the Mario spoke with his brother Andrea about several exciting new projects he had planned for the future. Their conversations on social media and over the phone continued until 1 a.m., when Mario cleverly said goodnight to his wife and told her he was going to sleep. However, he had no intention of resting. Instead, he spent the next hour browsing various adult websites. He then used Google Maps to locate the nearest strip club to his home. He arrived at the club at 2:53 a.m. Once there, he paid for 3 drinks with his card but did not request any additional services. After spending some time at the club, he returned home. Once at home, he went back to adult websites. Around 6 a.m., he made his final entry on the computer, which contained a rough budget for a new television show he was preparing. After that, he checked his messenger again for any unread messages, but there were none. The next morning, Mario was unresponsive. Neither his family nor his wife could reach him. They assumed he was either resting or busy with the new projects he had mentioned, so no one thought to check on him. At around 3:30 p.m., Raquel, his wife, received a call from his workplace inquiring about his whereabouts. The producer was concerned because Mario hadn't shown up for filming. This was unusual for him, especially since it was the day of one of his favorite programs, Kitchen. Mario took his work seriously and would never let his team down or miss filming without a good reason. When Raquel realized she couldn't reach him by phone or through social media, she became worried and called their worker, Wilma. Raquel asked Wilma to check on him. Around 5 p.m., Wilma arrived at the apartment while on the phone with Raquel. When she opened the door, she was horrified by what she saw and screamed loudly. She quickly ran outside because she found a lifeless body inside. Wilma stopped a passing police car and reported her horrifying discovery. Other rescue teams arrived within 10 minutes. The officers found the body of a 31-year-old man, dressed in pajamas, with a scarf wrapped around his neck. The other end was tied to a shelf in the hallway. It appeared that Mario ended his own life. The police carried out a brief investigation and found that the doors and windows were intact, indicating there had been no forced entry by any outsiders. There were no clear signs of a struggle on the Mario's body, only a few bruises were present that did not appear to result from defensive actions. All this pointed towards the ended his own life. Raquel learned of the tragedy and quickly completed her duties before returning home. She informed the police that he sometimes engaged in strangulation during their sexual activities, suggesting that this could have led to the tragedy. This information interested the police, who considered this angle. Although there was no apparent reason to dismiss it, the investigation proceeded cautiously without jumping to conclusions. Raquel requested that the body be cremated as soon as possible, but her request was denied because the medical examiner needed more time to analyze the body and determine its condition. On June 1, 2013, Mario's family filed an appeal challenging the findings of the inquest. They believe that Mario cannot end his own life. He was determined and had ambitious plans for the future, which he was proud of. His life seemed to be going well, and they felt there was no reason for him to end it. Additionally, Mario's family opposed cremation and insisted on burial instead. The tragic event has attracted public attention as all those allegedly involved are well-known figures in Spain. Raquel shared a post on social media mourning her husband's death, describing him as a cheerful and ambitious person. However, she raised the possibility that his death could have been the result of his own life or an accident. Raquel also alluded to potential issues with sex addiction and asked friends and supporters not to jump to conclusions and wait for the final investigation. A forensic expert concluded that Mario's death was likely an accident, noting that he had stopped using his phone around 6 a.m., which was the estimated time of death. Consequently, the case regarding Mario Biondo's death was closed, and no further investigations were planned. Mario was buried in his hometown in Italy on June 6, 2013, with his Raquel family in attendance. In a noble gesture, Raquel chose to forego her husband's inheritance in favor of his family. Afterward, the Raquel began to withdraw from those around her. She moved to a different apartment and sold the one she had shared with her husband. Soon after, she voluntarily resigned from her television position. Those who interacted with her during this time noted that she appeared calm and composed, never showing signs of sadness or regret. Seemingly unaffected by recent events, she only briefly withdrew from the public eye. On June 27, 2013, she returned to television, quickly resuming her role as a presenter. She explained that returning to work had helped her try to forget and find comfort. Raquel, who quickly recovered, began a relationship with a new man, a businessman who had previously given an interview on Rakita. Mario's relatives were puzzled by her behavior, as it seemed that she had completely forgotten about her husband. Just a few weeks ago, she had been deeply in love with him, and her sudden change in mood raised many questions and suspicions. Mario's relatives were concerned about the circumstances surrounding his death, so they asked the police to conduct a further investigation. They specifically requested that his wife be questioned first. The police initially declined, stating that the case was closed. However, 7 months later, in December 2013, they agreed to reopen the investigation. Mario's body was exhumed, and the police reinterrogated all the witnesses. Additionally, the family hired 2 independent experts because they believed the initial forensic expert had erred in his findings. The new investigation used computer modeling to examine the details of Mario's death. Analysis showed that his posture was inconsistent with end one's own life. He could not have been in that position to suffocate. The position of his legs did not match the marks on his neck or the type of knot used on his scarf, suggesting the scene had been staged. It was possible that someone else assisted him in staging it. Police began to consider the possibility that his death was a homicide. The case was reopened and the investigation continued. However, things took a different turn, made more complicated by the fact that so much time had passed since Mario's death that crucial evidence was lost. News spread quickly through the community and people began demanding answers about Mario's suspicious death. Back home, under pressure from the family, the local police also launched their own investigation, based on the results of an autopsy by independent forensic experts, and they began to suspect that this could be a homicide. Italian police traveled to Spain to conduct an autopsy and interview people close to Mario, including Raquel. They suspected she was hiding something due to her inconsistent statements. Police noticed several photos from the crime scene showing an ashtray full of cigarette butts and several empty beer cans, suggesting that the Mario had company that night. Surprisingly, no one checked for fingerprints or DNA on these items. Furthermore, no suicide note was found, adding to the mystery. Italian police also discovered that nearly 1,000 gigabytes of data had been deleted from the Mario's computer. Unfortunately, they were unable to recover this data. Mario's mother speculated that Raquel may have deleted the sensitive photos and videos that Raquel had discovered shortly before Mario's death. This further raises suspicions that the Raquel had other secrets that she feared would be revealed. Mario's family believes that Mario wasn't just visiting adult websites or strip clubs that night, he was looking for his wife there. They think he may have discovered something disturbing about her that could have motivated someone to harm him. It was discovered that the password on Mario's computer had been changed after his death and the files had been deleted shortly after, timing that coincided with the day of his funeral when Mario's entire family, including Raquel, were at the cemetery. This raises the question, who could have done this? It turns out that Raquel had a brother who was a computer expert. He left during the funeral and may have done this at her request. In May 2014, Raquel again attracted public attention when she was invited to appear on a show about her husband's death. However, she refused to participate and did not comment on the incident. However, she appeared before journalists in September 2014. She then accused her ex-mother-in-law of harassment. In response, Mario's family accused Raquel of involvement in his death. They believed she was responsible, but Raquel denied any wrongdoing and there was no evidence against her. Despite the accusations, Raquel continued her life. She married in September 2015 and gave birth to twins after undergoing hormone therapy to help her conceive. The father of her children is a businessman she met on television. Raquel no longer thinks about her ex-husband, while Mario's mother continues to search for evidence of Raquel's guilt. At one point, she even went to extremes. She released photos of the actual crime scene taken by the police. In these photos, Mario was in an unnatural position and showed no signs of life. Along with the photos, a forensic report from independent experts was included, stating that a person could not suddenly leave life in such a way. The photos showed clear contradictions with the initial police reports that were intended to quickly close the case after his death. Specifically, the reports mentioned that Mario's legs were bent, but in fact, his body was hanging with his legs straight. This move caused considerable public outrage, leading to increased police scrutiny, after which they initiated a more thorough investigation. In 2016, the intense media attention surrounding Raquel's trial led to a second autopsy conducted by a state medical examiner. This expert determined that Mario's death was a result of his own choice to end his life. Consequently, Raquel won the legal case, and the court ordered Mario's mother to pay her €3,000 for emotional damages. Following this, Mario's mother was placed under house arrest for 8 days. This incident fueled rumors and received extensive media coverage, culminating in a televised appeal that stressed the idea that Mario had chosen to end his life, reportedly due to his deep worries about infertility and his inability to have children with the woman he loved. As a result, the case was closed once again in Spain. The Italian police decided to close the case due to procedural constraints and the inability to conduct further investigations after so many years. They also criticized the Spanish police for the way they handled the investigation into Mario's death. However, the investigation did not end there. In 2017, a new expert, Spanish expert Luis Duca, was brought into the forensic department. After a thorough analysis of the circumstances surrounding Mario's death, he concluded that Mario could not have committed one's own life voluntarily. Luis Duca's opinion was highly valued because he had 15 years of experience investigating complex cases. The forensic expert stated that he thoroughly reviewed the dossier and all materials available to the police. His analysis was funded by Mario's family, and it confirmed their suspicions about the circumstances of Mario's death. Notably, there were no indicators of strangulation, such as small hemorrhages in the eyes. He believed that Mario could not have suffered a neck fracture from the height of his fall. Nor could he have died from suffocation since his heels touched the ground. For death by cerebral ischemia to occur, a tight noose would need to be placed around the neck. However, the scarf used did not adequately secure the back of the head and only partially surrounded it. The knot was so loose that Mario's head could easily have slipped out of the scarf. The pale blue color of the body suggests that Mario died lying down. There were no signs of convulsions at the time of death, as none of the items, including the figurine or picture frame, fell off the shelf, which would have occurred if there had been any violent movement. There was an unexplained fresh wound to the left of Mario's temple. The marks on Mario's neck did not match the scarf. He had clearly been strangled with another object, such as a rope or cable. The scratches on his neck could not be attributed to gravity alone. Additionally, the position in which the body was found raised significant questions. There were many more plausible ways for a person to die that would have been more comfortable. Why was he placed in this very awkward pose? According to police reports, the level of rigor mortis and the extremely low body temperature suggested that Mario died much earlier than 6 a.m., likely just after midnight. The theory of sexual activity was deemed unconvincing by experts, as Mario was fully clothed and there were no signs of any sexual manipulation involving his body. Experts used specialized software and obtained details about the metal shelf where Mario's body was found. Their analysis indicated that if he had died from hanging, he would have fallen to the floor. This led them to conclude that he must have been strangled in a different location, and the hanging was staged. Consequently, Mario's previously embalmed body was exhumed. During this examination, they discovered a significant hematoma in his brain, which suggested he had suffered a severe blow from a blunt object, information that had been missing from the original autopsy reports. It raised questions about how such crucial details could have been overlooked, giving the impression that they might have been intentionally concealed. Alongside the release of this data, Raquel revised her statement. Initially, she had said that her husband used strangulation as a sexual game since his youth, suggesting his death was either accidental or to end one's own life driven by personal issues. Now, she indicated that her husband might have been with someone he trusted while she was away, and that this person could have harmed him. She also speculated that her husband may have consumed alcohol or drugs, rendering him unable to defend himself. A new account emerged, stating that Mario allowed an acquaintance into their home, who then struck him forcefully on the head. This blow with a blunt object knocked him unconscious, after which a scarf was wrapped around his neck and used to strangle him. There were no signs of a struggle because he likely didn't have time to react. Following the attack, the assailant allegedly staged to end one's own life and calmly left the apartment. This explanation addressed why there were no indications of a break-in or any unknown people entering the home. In October 2018, writer Paolo Gentili released the book The Death of a Good Guy, the incredible story of Mario Biondo in Italy. He collaborated closely with Mario's mother, a key figure in this challenging case, as she seeks to defend her son's honor and discover the truth about his murder. The book portrays Raquel Sanchez Silva as manipulative and labels her a liar. On November 5, 2018, after a third autopsy was authorized by Italian authorities, the Anatomical Institute at the Palermo Polyclinic was tasked with conducting the examination. They performed X-rays and a CT scan, which included the participation of independent experts hired by Mario's family. In 2019, Mario's parents filed a complaint with the police investigator who was present at the scene of the crime. During the investigation in 2013, it was discovered that he had seriously violated his duties on several occasions. The police officer was convicted in May 2020, and both the doctor who performed the autopsy and his assistant also faced consequences. The investigation into Mario's death was reopened, revealing new information about the events surrounding the case. Many forensic science experts were brought in to investigate the case. However, a major problem arose because many of the documents used in the original investigation were no longer considered reliable and some evidence was ignored when the investigation was suspended. One of the most significant violations in this case involved abuse of office. It was demonstrated that the prosecutor's office allowed modifications to PDF files containing evidence of social media interactions and visits to specific websites, which the police had originally reported. This evidence suggested that Mario did not visit any adult websites nor did he contact a dealer to purchase drugs on the night of his death. All of this was intentionally fabricated. An investigation into Mario's internet connections that night revealed that 2 devices were connected to the apartment's Wi-Fi simultaneously, despite him being home alone. Furthermore, there was no evidence indicating that Mario had ever left the house. His supposed visits to the ATM and the strip club were based solely on the activation of his bank card in those locations, but it was not confirmed that he was the one using it. Mario, who used the cards, appeared to be the target of a malicious effort to damage his reputation. He was allegedly portrayed as a pervert and a substance abuser. However, if he was truly a pervert, why did he only pay for drinks at the strip club and not take advantage of the services offered? Unfortunately, recordings from the ATM and street surveillance cameras had been deleted over time, making it impossible to confirm who withdrew money from the ATM or who was present at the club. It was also puzzling why Mario, as a public figure often in the limelight, would choose to visit a questionable strip club and use his card there when he could have easily paid in cash to keep his visit discreet. A toxicology report on the Mario showed only a low level of alcohol in his system, with no other drugs present. A neighbor who saw Mario that evening began to doubt it was really him. The next day, it was revealed that Mario had been planning to ride his motorcycle and had checked the weather forecast. This raised the question, why would he do this if he was contemplating end one's own life? These inconsistencies prompted further inquiries. A witness was found, a waiter from the restaurant across from the house where the incident occurred. He reported that, from the very morning, all visitors spoke about something bad happening there and that police cars or an ambulance had arrived. However, how could outsiders know that the tragedy had occurred when the family's housekeeper discovered Mario's body after 4 p.m.? Despite new discoveries, several factors slowed down the investigation. First, most evidence had become outdated. Second, reconstructing the sequence of events was unreliable. Third, law enforcement officers initially involved made many errors and did not follow protocols. which required the case to be restarted. Due to the time lost, continuing the investigation became very challenging. In August 2022, the Spanish justice system decided to close the case because of insufficient evidence. However, the family of the Mario strongly opposed this decision, appealing to various authorities. Their persistence paid off, resulting in the case being reopened and classified as a murder in March 2023. The Mario family traveled to Spain again to gather more information about the circumstances surrounding Mario's death and to demonstrate their belief that Raquel was involved in the crime. They felt confident that no one else could have committed it. In the weeks leading up to Mario deaths, the couple's relationship had significantly worsened due to issues related to pregnancy, and they were close to getting a divorce. The Raquel likely wanted to avoid sharing Mario's assets, particularly after he discovered a damaging secret about her and took money from her, which could also have motivated her to commit the crime. Notably, she insisted on the cremation rite after seeing Mario's body, which raised suspicions that she was trying to hide something. Only Raquel and the mourning workers had keys to the apartment, but no one believed that an elderly worker could have killed Mario. The deceased's family was convinced he wouldn't have invited anyone over so late at night since he needed to wake up early. They believed Raquel, being clever, had meticulously planned everything. She arranged a trip to another city and attempted to tarnish her husband's reputation with false claims about his interest in adult websites and strip clubs. She also fabricated information that was included in the case file. The family of the Mario found her quick departure from their apartment suspicious, as if she were trying to hide something and dispose of the property to cover her tracks. Her rejection of Mario's inheritance, when it became known, was not a noble choice. It turned out that Mario had more debts than assets, which she would have had to pay if she had accepted the inheritance. Furthermore, accepting the inheritance would have required her to pay a significant tax, which she deemed too burdensome. Raquel's behavior at the funeral was also worrying. She arrived with assistants who took complete control of the situation, deciding when she should leave, how she should approach the grave, and how she should pose for photos. At one point, she asked to be left alone at the grave for a short time to pose for the cameras, a decision that left Mario's family confused. Some experts who spoke with Raquel believe she fits the profile of a typical integrated psychopath. This type of person has manipulative and narcissistic traits and can conceal their true identity. To avoid being revealed, they often rely on the idea that while people may see the facade they present, very few notice their true nature. Raquel, portraying herself as Mila, a beautiful woman, successfully hid her darker side, which was exposed by her husband. Unfortunately, he passed away shortly thereafter. The family of the deceased believes that Raquel skillfully used her intelligence and manipulative traits to carry out her plans. However, proving her involvement in the murder is quite complex, even though the circumstances seem clear. 10 years after the crime, Mario's family remains committed to uncovering the truth and seeking justice. Meanwhile, 50-year-old Raquel leads her life as if nothing ever occurred. She has established a new family and focused on her career, all the while denying any connection to the murder. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Kathleen Volbeke. Australia's most notorious female serial killer was recently released after questions about her guilt emerged, but she still spent 2 decades in prison. Kathleen Volbeke was born in 1967 in Western Sydney. Her life was challenging from the start, as her mother chose to leave her violent husband, who had a criminal background. This man had a history that included a knife attack, though the victim survived. It remains unclear if Kathleen experienced domestic violence or abuse from her father, but her mother was murdered by him. After her mother left the abusive relationship, her husband tracked her down and stabbed her 24 times, resulting in her death. He received a 15-year prison sentence for this crime. At the time, young Kathleen was just 18 months old and had already lost both parents. Kathleen was raised by a family in Newcastle. She had an older sister, Leah. As a child, Kathleen discovered that her parents had actually adopted her, which left her deeply upset. At school, she had friends who understood her difficult situation and supported her as much as they could. However, her adoptive parents were strict and controlling, often punishing her, which created further problems for the 16-year-old. A staff member informed her that she was not legally adopted. She had only been taken out of state temporarily, meaning she was still in state care. Kathleen began to worry that her new parents were not going to finalize the adoption because they did not love her enough. She felt a lack of love and affection from them, especially when compared to the affection they had for their biological daughter. These feelings were further intensified by the hardships of her teenage years. Even her supportive friends had to deal with the negativity and depression she was experiencing during this time. As a result, Kathleen became curious about her biological parents to understand why they had abandoned her. She soon learned that her biological father had murdered her mother and was sentenced to a long prison term. This shocked her deeply. The situation was made worse by the fact that it was the 1980s, a time when people rarely sought help from psychologists or psychiatrists for personal issues. Instead of reaching out for support, the girl kept her feelings to herself and seldom talked about them, even with her closest friends. After finishing school, Kathleen chose to leave her foster home and move in with her friend Billy Joe, who lived with his mother. This change took place in 1985, marking the beginning of her adulthood. One night, she and Billy Joe went to a disco where she met Skryg Falbeck, a 24-year-old employee at a mining company. He was kind and caring, making Kathleen feel confident, calm, and protected. They enjoyed each other's company, loved to dance, and their relationship quickly grew deeper. That same year, they decided to move in together, and it seemed like their relationship was perfect. 2 years later, the couple married in a simple ceremony. A year later, Kathleen became pregnant. In 1989, they welcomed their first child, a healthy baby boy named Caleb. However, he had a small defect in his larynx that made it difficult for him to breathe when his mouth was closed, causing him to breathe heavily and loudly. Kathleen, who had grown up without parents, was determined to be a good mother. She cared for Caleb with love and care, especially given his condition, and she kept constant tabs on him. Sadly, her efforts were not enough. Just 19 days after his birth, Kathleen found Caleb dead in his crib. His death was a devastating blow to both parents. Doctors examined the child and determined he was a victim of sudden infant death syndrome. Affects infants under 1 year of age and can lead to sudden death without an identifiable cause. The investigation found no indications of foul play. Despite their heartbreak, the couple chose to try for another child. A year later, on June 3, 1990, they welcomed their son Patrick. For several months, he thrived and developed normally, with no signs of issues. However, on the night of October 18th, Kathleen heard a cry from the children's bedroom. Her husband rushed to the room and discovered Patrick in his crib, appearing blue. Kathleen was by the crib, screaming and crying in fear. The man administered CPR while Kathleen called for an ambulance, which arrived quickly. Thankfully, Patrick was still alive and was taken to the hospital for urgent care. There, doctors diagnosed him with epilepsy. Fortunately, Patrick was saved and later discharged. For a while, everything was calm, but in February 1991, another seizure occurred while Skryg, the child's father, was at work. His wife, Kathleen, called him in tears. She said the child had had another seizure and could not be saved. The grieving couple then decided to move away from Newcastle to start a new life elsewhere. They moved to the small town of Metland, a population of less than 2,000 people, about a 40-minute drive from their old home. despite their past tragedies. They remained hopeful and continued trying for children, dreaming of a large family. Eventually, they welcomed their next daughter, Sarah. Sadly, she suffered from the same respiratory problems as their first child, Caleb. Her parents devoted themselves to her care and treatment, but despite their best efforts, Sarah was found dead in her bed on August 29, 1992, just 10 months after her birth. This loss was another devastating blow to them. Kathleen was deeply saddened by the misfortunes that had befallen her children. Frequent arguments between her and her husband had become a daily occurrence. Although they had decided to live separately, they had not yet filed for divorce. Kathleen repeatedly blamed herself for the deaths of her children, believing that she had failed to pay attention, missing important signs that could have helped them. She was devastated. At the time, there was no technology that could analyze the situation and identify any underlying problems. Doctors were baffled, declaring the children's deaths to be simply a series of tragic accidents. After a short separation, they got back together. They reunited and decided to move to a new home in Singleton, a town of about 5,000 people, not far from where they had lived. Their relationship improved, the challenges brought them closer together, and they became a stronger couple. They supported each other and continued to dream of having children. In late 1996, Kathleen became pregnant with their fourth child, 3 years after losing their daughter Sarah. Laura was born on August 7, 1997, and a year later the family celebrated her first birthday. The girl had no idea how significant this event was for her parents, especially given the sad history of sudden infant death syndrome affecting their previous children. The first year was especially difficult for them. They believed they could finally move past this challenging time. The arrival of their daughter helped improve their relationship. Kathleen and SKRYG were able to enjoy being parents. After enduring a tough decade of marriage, they thought things were finally on track. Sadly, just 6 months after their daughter's first birthday, Kathleen discovered Laura unresponsive. She called for an ambulance, but the doctors could not save the baby. The medical examiner who performed an autopsy on Laura was unable to determine the cause of death. While investigating the circumstances of Laura's death, it was discovered that Kathleen's other children had also died as infants and all had the same diagnosis, asphyxia, related to heart problems. However, medical experts were unable to piece together all the relevant information due to the lack of available data. The Kathleen family's life would never be the same after these events. In 1999, an anonymous person reported the circumstances surrounding the family to the police, stating that all of Kathleen's children had died mysteriously. The police received information and started investigating the family. They spoke with SKRYG Falbeck to gather details and express suspicions about the mother, who was always present when the children died suddenly and without explanation. After this conversation, the husband became suspicious of his wife upon learning about the investigation. He gave the police her personal belongings, including her diaries, which the police began to examine closely. These documents later became crucial to the case. Tensions within the family grew, and the husband started blaming his wife for the children's deaths. The following year, the couple split up. The police, after thoroughly reviewing all the case materials, suspected that the biological mother may have harmed her children. The Kathleen had lost a total of 4 babies. However, these suspicions alone were not enough for an arrest. They needed solid evidence, which they worked diligently to gather. A year after her separation from her husband, Kathleen was arrested on suspicion of murdering her 4 children. She denied the charges, claiming that they had all died from natural causes, but police believed she was being untruthful. She was eventually found guilty of 3 counts of premeditated murder and 1 count of manslaughter. The jury trial began in 2003. The prosecution argued that Kathleen strangled all 4 of her children, claiming it was the result of anger or stress related to postnatal depression. They said she had difficulty caring for her newborns, overwhelmed by sleepless nights and the constant crying of her children. In this distressed state, the prosecution claimed she made the decision to harm her children, which allegedly happened 4 times. However, no specific evidence of abuse was presented. The children were raised in a loving family environment where they were well cared for, always neatly dressed, and well fed. The bodies showed no signs of injury, such as abrasions or bruises, nor were there any indications of a struggle or acts of cruelty. The prosecution highlighted that Kathleen consistently discovered her deceased children, which increased suspicion. Kathleen was the last person to see the children alive, which raised suspicions. The prosecution found this coincidence hard to believe. In response, the defense argued that Kathleen was a housewife who spent all her time at home. In fact, she was the only person consistently with the children while her husband was at work. Therefore, it was natural for her to be the one to find them. The children died from sudden infant death syndrome, and this happened 4 times in a row. During the court proceedings, Kathleen remained composed and showed little emotion. She made brief statements, explaining that she did her best to care for the children and often struggled to sleep at night. However, whenever she managed to fall asleep or became distracted, a tragedy occurred. Kathleen maintained that she could never have harmed her children. Her calm demeanor throughout the trial was portrayed by the media as indifferent and without guilt for her actions. Kathleen's diary entries significantly influenced the verdict, but only selected excerpts were presented in court, in which she wrote, "I was so frustrated with myself, angry and sad after losing my temper, and I felt like the worst mother in the world. I was afraid she would abandon me like Sarah," referring to her feelings about her daughter Laura. While these statements expressed her self-blame, they did not explicitly admit guilt or describe the events leading up to her death. Despite this, her diary entries were interpreted only negatively, suggesting that she felt responsible for her children's deaths, although she did not admit to killing them. These records were not reviewed by psychologists or other experts who could have provided a more accurate interpretation. The prosecution strategically influenced the jury by reading brief excerpts while neglecting to mention that these were personal records of a woman mourning the loss of 4 children. The media's negative portrayal and the prosecutor's diary entries fostered doubts about the defendant. Additionally, the prosecutor referred to Meadows' Law, which consists of 3 rules established by a renowned British pediatrician, Roy Meadow. He stated that the death of a single baby is a tragedy, 2 deaths raise suspicion, and 3 are considered murder unless proven otherwise. In this case, there were 4 deaths. Caleb, the first child, died in 1989. This was followed by Patrick, who passed away in 1991 at just 8 months old due to epileptic seizures. Sarah died at night in 1993 when she was 10 months old. Laura, the last of the children, lived the longest, dying in 1999 at 18 months. Initially, Kathleen was considered a villain in the trial, with experts from various medical fields involved. They stated that sudden infant death syndrome can theoretically occur in one family, but the chances of this happening are very low. At that time, no one accepted responsibility for the tragic deaths. Were these events a coincidence in the Kathleen family? The numerous allegations contributed to the eventual guilty verdict. The case gained significant public attention and led to multiple trials across the country, where other mothers were also accused of causing their children's deaths due to sudden infant death syndrome. These women denied the allegations but were unable to prove their innocence, resulting in their arrest and facing intense scrutiny from prosecutors. Prosecutors even looked into Kathleen's past, which included a troubled childhood and a father in prison for killing his mother, which showed a penchant for violence. And the incriminating evidence against Kathleen came from her ex-husband, Skryg Falbik, who testified against her in court. She felt deeply betrayed by his testimony, as he believed at the time that she was responsible for the deaths of their children. In May 2003, after a 7-week trial, Catherine Volbeg was convicted of 3 counts of murder and causing serious harm to her first son. When the verdict was read, she broke down in tears, overwhelmed with despair. Catherine believed she was innocent and did not expect to be found guilty. The media widely covered the case, portraying it as a triumph over one of Australia's most notorious female serial killers. Public sentiment towards Kathleen was extremely negative. She was widely hated. She received a 40-year prison sentence but could apply for parole after 30 years. Unsatisfied with her sentence, she appealed, leading to a review in 2005, which reduced her sentence to 30 years with early parole eligibility. After 25 years in prison, Kathleen faced hardship. She was treated with contempt and violence. Fortunately, Kathleen had friends who visited her regularly and believed she was innocent. Refusing to give up, she sought to overturn her conviction, filing an appeal and working with her attorneys from California, who brought in experts and new findings related to child mortality that could support her case. After 12 years in prison, in 2015, there was good reason to believe Kathleen was innocent. Several forensic experts reviewed the case documents and concluded that the children's deaths were due to natural causes. This new evidence prompted further investigations in 2018. Kathleen was ultimately left alone during the investigation. She spoke out to defend herself against the false accusations stemming from her diary entries. Kathleen explained that writing in her diary was her way of coping with life's challenges, and it provided her with relief. Doctors believed that the deaths of 4 babies in a couple suffering from phobias could be linked to a genetic mutation inherited from their parents. However, the scientific techniques available at that time were not reliable enough to confirm this, and mere words were insufficient. In 2020, an immunology professor from the Department of Genetic Medicine at the Australian National University joined the investigation. He initiated a global study into the situation faced by the defendant. Rare abnormalities related to genetic mutations were identified, leading to birth defects in Kathleen's children. Doctors confirmed that all 4 children in Kathleen's family had these rare mutations, which caused fatal seizures. The condition was determined to be a genetic abnormality, and there were no signs of violent death in these cases. In 2021, a group of prominent scientists from different areas of medicine, active in the 1990s, signed a petition in support of Kathleen, strongly asserting her innocence. They appealed to law enforcement, emphasizing Kathleen's innocence and referencing recent scientific discoveries and research that were unavailable at the time she was wrongly convicted. A new investigation was initiated by the end of 2022 and concluded in April 2023. Throughout this investigation, new evidence was gathered and submitted for review. During the same period, Kathleen's diaries were re-examined by experts in psychology and psychiatry. After reviewing the entries, they concluded that the diaries did not contain confessions. Instead, they reflected Kathleen's internal struggles, including her fears, anxiety, and grief related to post-traumatic stress. Forensic experts, who had investigated numerous infant murders, raised doubts about the possibility of strangling a child without leaving any evidence. As a result of these findings, the prosecutor's office was persuaded to reconsider the case's sentence and punishment. This new information sparked significant public outrage. Some people continued to believe in Kathleen's guilt and argued that she deserved to be in prison, while others were furious, questioning why an innocent woman had spent 20 years behind bars. On June 5, 2023, Kathleen Volbeg was pardoned after serving 20 years of a prison sentence that was originally intended to last at least 25 years. This pardon allowed her to appeal to the Court of Appeal for criminal cases, which could provide her with financial compensation for the years she lost. However, she still faces the lasting effects of media coverage that has turned her case into a phenomenon known as Kathleen phobia, causing her to face hostility from strangers. Financial compensation cannot make up for the time she spent alone in prison, alongside dangerous criminals. Nor can it erase the humiliation and betrayal she experienced. Her life has truly been a nightmare. Kathleen is now 56 years old and continues to persevere despite everything. If her children had lived, her firstborn, Caleb, would be 34 years old, and her youngest daughter, Laura, would be 25. They might have had children of their own, allowing Kathleen to become a grandmother. Sadly, she has not had the chance to enjoy those joys in life. Currently, forensic medicine experts are debating the validity of the law of Meadows, arguing that it is fundamentally flawed. Many women have suffered as a result of this law and were acquitted later on. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Karen Newell. Sunday evening, February 20th, 1994, on a desolate rural road in Orange County, Florida, between Cocoa Beach and Orlando. A car was parked on the side of the road, and a woman was frantically waving her arms at passing vehicles. When a driver finally stopped, she pleaded for help. In the car's headlights, a man could be seen bleeding in the passenger seat. A woman named Karen Newell was trying to save her husband, John Newell, who had been shot multiple times but was still alive. Karen asked the driver for a phone and urgently called 911, screaming that her husband was dying. Within minutes, a deputy sheriff arrived, followed by police and paramedics, but it was too late for John. He needed a forensic expert, not medical assistance. He died before help could arrive, and all the doctors could do was confirm his death from multiple gunshot wounds. They immediately began communicating with Karen about the tragic situation. Karen recounted that they were attacked while returning home to Orlando after a day at the beach. On the way back, their cars started having problems that she couldn't understand. Her husband asked her to pull over to the side of the road to check the issue. As Karen got out and opened the hood, a small sedan parked right next to them. Inside were three men who looked threatening. One detail she remembered was a sticker on the rear window that said "Bad Boy." The men got out of their car without noticing Karen, who was focused on the engine. She watched as one of them approached her husband's window and demanded his wallet. Her husband refused and tried to defend himself. During the struggle, one of the attackers pulled out a gun and shot him multiple times. Afterward, the men jumped back into their car and drove away. Fortunately, Karen was unharmed. She quickly ran to John, who was bleeding. She felt helpless and couldn't do anything to save him. Karen Newell was originally from Florida and had faced a difficult life filled with cruelty since childhood. Despite these challenges, she maintained a cheerful and energetic spirit, enjoying parties and socializing with her many friends throughout high school. As she blossomed into a beautiful young woman, heads turned wherever she went, but this did not lead to a happy family life. After graduating, she experienced several unsuccessful relationships and, by her 20th birthday, had been married twice, with both marriages ending in divorce. Nevertheless, she hopeful. That spring, she focused on advancing her career. Previously, she had held various accounting jobs and worked as a nurse in a private clinic. This charming brunette even entered beauty contests, hoping to launch a modeling career, but luck was not on her side in those pursuits. One evening, she walked into a bar in one of Orlando's suburbs. There, she found a friendly stranger sitting alone with a drink. He was John, a respected local mechanic who owned a car repair shop. Just before their meeting, John had gone through a difficult breakup with his first wife, a Navy nurse who had just returned home from a long business trip. She told him she was seeing someone else, which was why he went to the bar that night. When Karen saw him, she felt an immediate attraction. Confident and outgoing, she approached him, sat down next to him, and began chatting. She discovered that he was the owner of a popular auto repair shop, young, successful, and attractive. Their brief encounter quickly developed into a passionate night. John then fell in love with Karen, and she felt the same. Their relationship flourished rapidly, and just 2 months after their intense night together, they got married on May 22, 1993. The newlyweds appeared genuinely happy, surrounded by a wave of love and joy. Shortly after their wedding, Karen's modeling prospects improved, thanks to her husband's connections and her regular participation in beauty contests. She landed a well-paying television job, leading to a busy schedule that often kept her away for several days. Despite John's worries about losing Karen like he lost his first wife, she reassured him that she would never betray him. She reminded him that their sacrifices would eventually pay off, and together they dreamed of retiring in 5 years, free from work and worry. However, just a few months after their wedding, Karen discovered she was pregnant. The couple was thrilled. John's desire for a large family seemed within reach, and they continued to support each other through this exciting new chapter. A few days after Valentine's Day, they planned a weekend getaway to the beach in Florida to relax after a busy week. On February 20th, John and Karen packed their bags and drove to Cocoa Beach, located on the east side of Orlando. Known for its stunning views and excellent surfing, they spent the entire day enjoying the beach, having a barbecue, swimming, and before leaving, stopped by a surf shop to buy some gear. After that, they packed their belongings and headed home. Karen was driving because her husband had consumed some alcohol earlier and wanted to avoid losing his license. John sat in the front passenger seat. They passed through a toll booth and entered the state highway. At this time, her husband was adjusting the radio, which wasn't functioning properly. Suddenly, the car skidded slightly. Karen mentioned to her husband that the car felt odd, and she noticed a strong vibration in the steering wheel. They decided to pull over and investigate, but then the attack occurred. John was shot multiple times while sitting in the passenger seat of the car. The police conducted a detailed search for the attackers. Using Karen's testimony, they were able to create a detailed description of the car, noting one key detail, a sticker on the rear window. Karen later reported feeling unwell. She was pregnant, so emergency services rushed her to the hospital to ensure her and her baby's safety. 2.40 caliber shell casings were found near the car, indicating that the men were dangerous criminals. They were armed with at least one handgun. Surprisingly, they fled so quickly that they forgot to take the victim's wallet. Police alerted neighboring counties, notified all available patrols, and warned drivers of passing cars. Checkpoints were set up, with officers carefully monitoring vehicles. Initially, attention was focused on cars with bad boy stickers. However, no drivers reported seeing such a car, and it did not pass through the checkpoints. In the ambulance, Karen answered all the necessary questions about the incident. However, the health of the Karen and child was the main priority at that time. After being examined at the hospital, doctors confirmed that the Karen was in stable condition. She was able to speak with police officers later that same day. Karen provided a detailed account of the events. She explained that they were not alone on the beach. A friend from work, Peter, joined them shortly after they arrived at Cocoa Beach. The three of them spent most of the day together, and at the end of the day, they drove back to Orlando in 2 separate cars. Peter drove his own car while Karen followed him closely behind. After passing the toll booth, Peter drove ahead and quickly vanished from view. Soon after, Karen's car began to vibrate. Her husband insisted they stop immediately to check the car's condition. Karen got out of the driver's seat and opened the hood. Suddenly, she heard the screech of brakes as a stranger's car pulled up near theirs. Just seconds later, gunfire erupted. In that moment, Karen crouched down to hide under the open hood. She overheard the attackers, dressed in black and white, demanding her husband's wallet. Then, several loud shots rang out, and the criminals fled the scene. She noticed that the robbers didn't take the wallet, but she couldn't see their faces. The police arrived quickly and began investigating the scene, exploring various possibilities. Some unusual aspects caught their attention, raising doubts about Karen's statement. First, no one reported seeing a car marked "Bad Boy." Second, it seemed odd that the robbers, who were after a wallet for money, would leave abruptly and forget their loot after committing murder. Third, they overlooked the woman and didn't check why the car's hood was open. Finally, it was odd that John, a mechanic, didn't check under the hood himself, while the one checking the car was Karen, who didn't know much about cars. The police did not charge Karen with fraud. Instead, they chose to gather more details about the case. The police quickly found some interesting information, specifically a report from 3 months earlier in Orlando. It turned out that an assault had occurred at Karen's home. According to the couple's previous statements, at around 9 p.m., Karen heard a noise in their backyard. She told her husband about it and asked him to check it out. When John went outside, he encountered 2 masked men. The neighbor quickly left the house when he heard the noise, and the porch light suddenly turned on, scaring the attackers, so they ran away. John returned home and told his wife what had happened, and she called the rescue service. John was not seriously injured, but he had a lot of bruises. John had no valuable information that could help catch the criminals, since he could not see their faces. After a brief and unsuccessful search, John's family's case was declared unsolved. John believed that he had interrupted the robbers, leading to their attack on his home. However, things now seemed more serious. He may have inadvertently made enemies, and they had come back to destroy him. This also explained why they did not take his wallet. Their goal was never to steal, but to kill him. The police started investigating all the people that John might have had conflicts with recently. John ran a successful business, raising the question of whether competitors could resort to extreme actions. Most of John's friends and acquaintances were unaware of any conflicts. John was known to be a kind and non-confrontational person, never speaking about any unpleasant situations that might cause resentment towards him. Everyone agreed that he was always willing to help others. As the investigation progressed, it became clear that John's kind nature may have contributed to the tragedy. Police discovered that shortly before the attack, a stranger had appeared in John's backyard. He was identified as Peter, a friend of Karen's who had recently gone on vacation with their family John. Peter's apartment had been broken into, forcing him to seek temporary housing. Karen convinced John to allow Peter to stay in her home for a while to support him during this difficult time. Peter is an attractive young man with blonde hair and blue eyes. After new discoveries in the investigation, there is growing suspicion that Karen has feelings for Peter, and that Peter is likely the father of the child. It is possible that the couple planned to eliminate John in order to benefit financially from their relationship. Peter, who had a close relationship with Karen, became a suspect in the murder investigation. He was brought to the police station for questioning. During the interview, Peter's account matched what Karen had said. He confirmed that he had gone to Cocoa Beach with Karen's family and spent time there with them, drinking beer and smoking marijuana. That evening, he drove away after passing through a checkpoint, not waiting for Karen's family because he was on his way home to Port St. Lucie. Overall, his story was consistent with Karen's account. He provided detailed information about his background to counter any claims about an affair with Karen. At that moment, it became clear that Karen had lied. She had claimed that Peter was an assistant producer at a TV channel where she worked, but that was false. In reality, Peter did not have a steady job. He had dropped out of school and occasionally did part-time work like mowing lawns. This allowed him to make enough money to get by, but he was not involved in any television work. Police learned from Peter's friends that Karen had been having an affair with Peter, which began a few months before he moved into John's house. During this time, Peter often bragged about his relationship with a married woman and often shared the story of how they met. It was later revealed that Karen had used business trips as an excuse to spend time with Peter. At the time, Karen was 29 and Peter was 18. While Karen kept the relationship a secret, she often visited him in the city, where they enjoyed days together and spent John's money. They met by chance while driving on the highway. The Karen caught his attention with her handcuff keychain hanging from her rearview mirror. When they stopped at a traffic light, he happily stuck his hands out the window as if they were handcuffed. To his surprise, she smiled back and they began flirting. After their first meeting, they spent the night together on the beach. His friends noticed that Peter was very fond of Karen. He even talked seriously about marrying her and was convinced that she might be pregnant with his child. The couple had a clear motive for killing John. However, at this stage of the investigation, there was no concrete evidence to confirm their involvement. The first step was to locate the murder weapon. A .22 caliber pistol was found at the crime scene. Police are looking for witnesses who may know about Peter and Karen's weapons. They interviewed one of the Karen's ex-husbands, who revealed that Peter was not Karen's only sexual partner. She often meets with her ex in various hotels. In November 1993, she approached him with an unusual request to borrow a .22 caliber pistol for self-defense, claiming she felt threatened after two strangers attacked John. He believed her and provided her with the weapon, which raised suspicions. It is necessary to locate the pistol and conduct ballistics testing to determine whether John was shot with this gun. When the police asked Karen's ex-husband about the weapon, he reported that she had not yet returned it. This raised the police's suspicions about Karen's involvement in her husband's death. As they investigated her background, they discovered that she was on probation at the time. In the 1980s, Karen had been convicted of credit card forgery and large-scale theft. Because of her probation status, she was not allowed to possess the weapon given to her by her ex-husband. Consequently, just 8 days after John's death, Karen was arrested for violating her probation, which meant she would remain in custody until the investigation was finished. Police quickly received crucial evidence just 2 days after the arrest. They interviewed Louis Aragon, Karen's half-brother. Louis had a criminal history. In the summer of 1993, Karen approached him with a proposition. Her husband had a $500,000 life insurance policy, and Karen wanted him to help eliminate John. In exchange, she promised him a large payout. However, despite the tempting offer, Louis refused to participate in the murder. In November, Peter and Karen planned to brutally beat John in their yard over a money dispute. Fortunately, a neighbor intervened in time and scared the attackers away, which angered Karen, who had begun to plan how to get rid of her troublesome husband. Key to the investigation was the testimony of her half-brother, Louis. He revealed that Karen had approached him just days after the first attack and tried to convince him to participate in a second murder, but he had refused. Peter, however, was willing to do anything for Karen. As Thanksgiving approached in 1993, Karen convinced her husband to allow Peter to live with them. The police needed to verify the truthfulness of their new witness. They started by reviewing the couple's insurance policies. They discovered that Karen had taken out a life insurance policy on her husband for $250,000, which was stored in his safe. Over time, she acquired several additional policies, totaling around $500,000, a significant sum at that time. It appeared that her greed led her to eliminate her husband in order to collect the insurance payouts. Karen was determined to receive the money. In the days following John's death, she contacted various insurance companies, and some had already issued her compensation by the time of the investigation. However, the largest payments were on hold, prompting Karen to visit multiple insurance companies to demand her money. Meanwhile, on March 28, 1994, Peter was arrested as well. Both were charged with John Newell's murder. The prosecutor's office alleges that from the beginning, Karen began her relationship with John with the intention of receiving his insurance money. After getting married, she quickly took out a $250,000 life insurance policy and continued to purchase smaller policies. However, she did not directly participate in any crimes. Instead, she manipulated Peter and convinced him that they would marry and have a child together, portraying her husband, John, as an obstacle to their future. After the murder, a pregnancy test was conducted and it was found that she was not pregnant. She had an IUD, preventing any possibility of pregnancy at the time. Karen was fully aware of this. It was clear that her claim of being pregnant was simply a manipulation tactic to control the men around her. Given her deceitful nature, the prosecutor's office was aiming for the death penalty. And Peter was also facing the death penalty. So it was easy to get a confession by offering a deal. The plea agreement included cross-examination, during which Peter quickly admitted to having an affair with Karen. He claimed that they had been intimate at every meeting. She had won his heart. Peter revealed that it was Karen who had suggested attacking John in his apartment. When that plan failed, Karen began planning a more elaborate crime. As soon as Peter got out of the car, he pointed a gun at John's head and fired 3 more bullets into John's chest. Peter then dumped the gun in a lake several miles from the crime scene. Divers were able to recover the gun, and ballistics tests confirmed that it was the same gun that had shot John Newell. Additionally, the gun's serial number matched the serial number registered to Karen's ex-husband. In exchange for this crucial information, Peter was offered a plea deal for second-degree murder instead of first-degree murder. During the preliminary hearing, it was clear that Karen's lawyers were determined to fight hard. They tried to blame Peter, arguing that he was the mastermind behind the crime, motivated by jealousy over. Karen was portrayed as an innocent victim caught in the love triangle. If Karen was not involved in planning the murder, then how did Peter get the gun that her ex-husband owned? She never gave a satisfactory explanation for this. In addition, Peter and Karen's ex-husband did not know each other. The ex-husband even confirmed that Karen asked him for a gun. On September 5, 1994, Peter was sentenced to a long prison term with the possibility of parole, and he was released in early January 2010. And Karen Newell was sentenced to life in prison. She complained that it was unfair that Peter, who pulled the trigger, received a lighter sentence than she. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Amanda Perreault. On February 3, 2020, Seth Perreault called his boss, the sheriff, to report a tragic incident at his home. His wife had died and he needed help. When the police arrived, Seth had just gotten out of the shower. Inside the bedroom, they discovered the body of 44-year-old Amanda on the bed, shot in the head. Initially, the scene appeared to match Seth's description on the phone. Then forensic experts began combing the area and collecting evidence. Seth was taken to the police station to give a statement. He said that he and his wife, Amanda, were lying in bed when they got into an argument. During the argument, Amanda suddenly pulled out a gun and shot herself in the head. Seth said that he had no time to react and stop her. When questioned by police, he described their day before the tragedy. They had dropped their children off at school and had not been anywhere else until the incident. Seth appeared extremely upset, almost in tears, expressing regret for losing the woman he loved more than anything after 8 happy years together. Initially, Seth said he had not touched Amanda. However, he later said he had hugged her several times after the shooting. He struggled to remember whether he had touched the gun and repeatedly claimed that he was a good cop. The police asked him more questions, leading to increasing doubts about his credibility. They knew that Seth, who had come from another police department, had a bad reputation and was known for aggressive behavior at work. When Amanda's relatives heard about the tragedy, they rushed to the house and informed the police that Amanda would never act in such a way or leave her children with an abusive husband. They were convinced that Seth had killed Amanda and urged the police to investigate the possibility. Meanwhile, forensic experts thoroughly examined the crime scene and concluded that it was a homicide. Their findings were supported by the location of the body and the gun. A .380 caliber Smith & Wesson was discovered nearby, with a discarded magazine found next to her right side. A bullet was found in the chamber of the semi-automatic pistol. When the gun is fired, the spent cartridge case is ejected, and a new cartridge is loaded. Because there was a bullet in the chamber, the magazine should have been removed after the shot was fired. If the gun was functioning properly, the magazine could only be ejected by pressing a button, which would have had to be done after the shot. However, if the Amanda died immediately, who pressed the button? The weapon was tested and found to have no faults. Additionally, there was no blood on Amanda's hands or on the long sleeves of her shirt. The bedroom contained 20 miniature whiskey bottles, and there were no signs of forced entry or any intruders. The primary suspect was the Seth. He was a police officer trained to use a gun, and the murder was carried out with his service weapon. Police began investigating the couple's relationship more closely and discovered some interesting details. Amanda Perot was born in 1975 in Lawrenceville, Georgia, a small town with a population of about 29,000. Relatives described her as a cheerful and kind person, always willing to help others and devoted to her family. The Amanda had 2 children from her first marriage, which ended in a difficult divorce due to her ex-husband's abusive behavior. Amanda struggled to escape this toxic relationship. In 2011, after her divorce, Amanda met Seth online. At that time, Seth was seriously ill with cancer, unemployed, and living with his parents, who were supporting him financially. He loved communicating online, and when he discovered Amanda's profile, he felt intrigued. He contacted her and they started chatting. To Amanda, Seth seemed like the complete opposite of her ex-husband. He was sweet, polite, and kind. As their conversations continued, Amanda and Seth grew close and started considering a face-to-face meeting. Eventually, Seth's health improved, and his cancer went into remission. He invited Amanda to meet in person. And their date went well. They instantly liked each other and began dating. During this time, Amanda learns that Seth has a daughter from a previous marriage who lives with mother, and he is determined to fight for custody of the child. Amanda moved in with Seth's parents along with. They were pleased that Seth had finally found a partner and believed everything was going well. Amanda took on the responsibility of caring for Seth, which led her to drift away from her own family. 2 of her sisters noted that after the move, Amanda dedicated herself entirely to looking after Seth. She also worked and took care of her children, leaving her little time to connect with family and friends. It was a challenging period for Amanda, but she never complained. Seth insisted that Amanda quit her job to be with him all the time, and his fairly wealthy parents supported this decision. Over time, Amanda's relatives lost touch with her. She stopped attending family gatherings, missing Christmas and Thanksgiving. She also ceased to personally congratulate her relatives on their birthdays, choosing instead to do so only by phone. Amanda became focused entirely on Seth and the children, celebrating all holidays with his family. Seth then took Amanda's cell phone, saying she didn't need it because she was always home with him. Amanda didn't have a phone, so her family couldn't contact her. Seth controlled every aspect of Amanda's life and wouldn't let her leave the house alone. After 5 years together, Seth and Amanda secretly married on June 23, 2017. Only their children attended the wedding. They didn't invite anyone else or tell anyone about this important moment in Amanda's life. Many believe that Seth married Amanda primarily for his own interests. He was determined to gain custody of his daughter from his ex-wife, and to do this, he needed to formalize his relationship with Amanda. Many thought this was his true motivation for marrying her. Without this goal, he might not have married at all. Although Seth appeared happy with Amanda, he had complete control over her and was very persistent in getting his way. He spent months in court fighting for custody of his daughter. Eventually, he was successful and won full custody of his daughter, after which Seth took his daughter to live with them. Amanda had no say in family decisions and was completely submissive to his decisions. In 2018, Seth's father purchased a beautiful house for them near the lake, and the family moved in. Amanda remained a housewife, as Seth did not allow her to work. A year later, Seth secured a job as a patrolman with the Tenton Police Department. After Seth started his job, his relationship with Amanda deteriorated. He began drinking excessively after work. One night, he fell down the stairs while drunk and got hurt. This led him to misuse painkillers along with alcohol, causing him to become extremely irritable and aggressive. He often threatened Amanda physically. On January 28, 2020, after suffering another attack from her husband, Amanda escaped to a neighbor's house and called 911 for help. When the police arrived, Amanda showed them the bruises from the abuse. Their 3 children confirmed her story. Seth's 8-year-old daughter reported that she had heard screams and seen her father pushing and hitting Amanda. Terrified, she had hidden in the closet to avoid the violence. After Amanda fled, Seth discovered the children hiding and forced them to come out. They obeyed but were very frightened of him. Seth was then arrested and charged that evening. Amanda called her sister, asking for a ride the next morning because she was afraid to stay home, knowing that her husband would be released soon. The next morning, Seth was released on $1,500 bail and returned home. Amanda later called her sister back saying that she didn't need to come anymore because everything was fine. However, her sister was shocked, realizing how dangerous Seth was to Amanda and the children. She couldn't understand why Amanda continued to forgive him. Amanda's sister came to her house and tried to convince her to leave with the children and divorce Seth. Amanda was against this idea. Her sister then left. Seth was temporarily suspended during the investigation into allegations of domestic violence and child abuse. Amanda took part in the hearings related to Seth's case. When the judge asked if she wanted a restraining order against him, she declined, saying she had forgiven him. As a result, Seth was released, and they went home together. Just 5 days later, on February 3, 2020, Amanda was found dead. Police, after reviewing a history of conflict and domestic violence, concluded that Amanda's death was not an accident. They suspected Seth of shooting her. During questioning, Seth maintained his innocence, claiming that their argument was due to recent allegations of domestic violence. During the argument, she pulled out a gun and shot herself. The police questioned how Amanda could have accessed Seth's gun, given his strict nature and the control he had over her. Police later found a handwritten note on Amanda's nightstand in which she praised her husband and described his great character. In the note, she wrote, "Amanda Perot wants to retract her statement. Her husband has never raised a hand to hit her. She feels very bad for the humiliation she has caused him. She is willing to accept any punishment she deserves for her actions." However, Amanda's sister does not believe that Amanda would write such things about her husband. The handwriting on the note appears to be different from Amanda's usual style, raising concerns that she may not have written it herself, or that she wrote it under pressure or at the behest of her husband. Therefore, the handwriting appears unusual. Seth has a hard time explaining the bruises on Amanda's body. Police suspect that he coerced her into writing the letter to make her death appear voluntary, in an attempt to escape guilt. The investigation is ongoing, with police believing Seth shot his wife and actively gathering evidence against him. They have interviewed the couple's friends and family to uncover more about the history of domestic violence in their relationship. Neighbors reported hearing screams from the couple's house almost daily and often saw Seth intoxicated. The community was aware that the couple frequently argued, with Seth being the aggressor when he drank. Amanda, on the other hand, appeared to be a quiet and modest person, and neighbors never saw her drinking. There were multiple instances where neighbors witnessed Seth dragging Amanda by her hair in their driveway. Although they felt sympathy for her, no one called the police out of fear of Seth, who was a police officer himself. On the day Amanda died, the neighborhood was unusually quiet. There were no sounds coming from the house. The only witness to the events was Seth, whose testimony was not trusted during the investigation. It was revealed that just 20 minutes before Seth's call, a deputy police officer had shown up at their door with a summons for domestic violence. Video from the doorbell camera showed the officer approaching, introducing himself, and waiting for someone to answer. Although Seth heard noises inside, no one answered. The deputy police officer were puzzled by Seth's behavior, knowing that Seth was a police officer who knew the procedures. Seth only needed to hand over some documents, so the deputy police officer wondered why he was hiding and refusing to open the door. Initially, the deputy police officer thought that Seth might not be fully clothed, which could explain the lack of response. He turned his back to the door and asked Seth to simply hand over the documents without looking inside, but still no one responded. This was unusual. After waiting another 7 minutes, the deputy police officer left. They later speculated that when Seth saw the police at the door, he became frightened. Apparently, a shot was fired just before the deputy police officer arrived. After the deputy left, he took a few minutes to calm down and then called his sheriff on his cell phone. Police later discovered that Seth had lied about not leaving the house on the day of the murder. Police reviewed surveillance cameras from the area and the couple's bank card transactions, finding that they had gone to a store 10 miles from their home that day and purchased 20 bottles of liquor. More importantly, the cameras recorded what the Seth was wearing: a Pink Floyd t-shirt and black sweatpants. 4 hours later, when police arrived at the Peralt's home, Seth was wearing different clothes. A plain black t-shirt and the clothes he had worn to the store were found in a washing machine, which had been turned off. In addition, Seth was still wet from his shower. Police suspected that he may have tried to wash off gunpowder residue and blood that may have gotten on him during the shooting, but he had not started the washing cycle. A small smear of Amanda's blood was later found on his pants, and traces of gunpowder were discovered on Seth's left hand. Based on this evidence, the investigation resumed just 2 days after the tragedy on February 5 in 2020. Seth was arrested for the murder of Amanda Perot. He denied any involvement in her death and also refuted allegations of domestic violence. The couple's 3 children were interviewed by child psychologists, and all 3 reported that Seth frequently abused their mother in front of them. The day before Amanda's death, she urged the children not to speak to the police, warning them that Seth might lose custody of their daughter and could retaliate violently. The children lived in constant fear of him. Their testimonies were presented as evidence during the trial. Seth's daughter requested to move in with her mother, and this request was granted, while Amanda's other children stayed with her sister throughout the trial. On August 21, 2020, something unexpected occurred. The autopsy report was released. The state medical examiner concluded that Amanda Perot had shot herself, citing the absence of struggle signs and the burns on her skin from the gunshot. This finding shocked the prosecution, who disagreed with the forensic expert's assessment. The trial began on November 3, 2020, with the prosecution presenting all the evidence that Seth was guilty: gunpowder residue on his hands, blood on his unwashed clothes, discrepancies in the placement of Amanda's body in the gun, and most importantly, Seth's motive for killing his wife. Despite this evidence, Seth maintained his innocence. His attorney argued that changing clothes and showering were not important. Seth simply chose to shower during the day and made no attempt to hide anything. The bloodstain may have been from a previous incident where Amanda accidentally hurt herself. However, the presence of gunpowder on Seth's hands was unexplained. It was suggested he might have gotten it while at the police station. The lawyer pointed out that even the state medical examiner concluded Amanda shot herself, as there were no clear signs of a struggle. While burns on her body indicated she was shot from a close distance, the prosecutor claimed that Seth had given her alcohol and drugs, preventing her from defending herself. Amanda's phone had photos of her with a bruise under her eye and a split lip, as well as videos of her husband threatening her, which she had recorded secretly. In a message to her sisters, Amanda said, "Seth just choked she until I almost lost consciousness. He split she lip." The prosecutor noted that a gun magazine was found next to her right hand, while a firearm with a loaded cartridge was located about 1.5 meters away against the wall and ceiling. Blood was also found on the bedspread, with 2 cartridges present, suggesting that the crime scene had been staged. This was in contrast to Seth's claim that he had not touched or moved the body or the gun. The sister of the Amanda testified in court that Amanda had told her just days before the tragedy that if anything happened to her, it would be at the hands of her husband. Police chief reported that when he received the call about Amanda's death, Seth initially mumbled something incoherent before suddenly screaming. Only after he calmed down was he able to explain what had happened. Additionally, Seth's cellmate testified during the trial, claiming that Seth confessed to him about killing his wife. He described how Seth had given Amanda alcohol, sedatives, and painkillers on the day she died, which caused her to lose consciousness, after which he shot her. A toxicology report confirmed that Amanda had high levels of alcohol and drugs in her system at the time of her death. On February 25, 2022, after 2.5 hours of deliberation, the jury found Seth Perot, 45, guilty of murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Seth's lawyers were furious with the verdict, claiming that there was no direct evidence to prove his guilt. Following the verdict, Seth Perot's new legal team filed its first appeal, which was denied. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Joel Shanbrum. Joel Shanbrum grew up in the town of Northridge, California. He met his future wife, Jennifer, while working as a DJ at a club. They quickly formed a close relationship and began dating. Many people are jealous because their relationship looks so perfect and their happiness radiates to everyone around them. Both sets of parents supported their relationship enthusiastically. Their delightful relationship eventually led to marriage. Jennifer and Joel married in 1991, and she moved to Los Angeles. Joel aspired to be a police officer, so he joined the police academy and, by 1993, was employed by the Los Angeles law enforcement agencies. Joel was dedicated to his job, especially overseeing troubled teenagers, and took pride in helping others. They later had a son named Jacob, and the family seemed to be living the perfect life. Although on the outside the family looked happy, but inside they hide dark secrets, which eventually lead to tragedy. On March 18, 1998, Jennifer's mother, Diane Bates, who lived with them, called 911. She returned home in the evening and found Joel lying motionless on the living room couch. He showed no signs of life and was bleeding. When the police arrived, she met them outside, she too afraid to go back inside. She suggested to the officers that Joel might have taken end his own life. The police reassured her and entered the house. Upon examining the body in the scene, it became clear that it was a murder. Joel had been shot 3 times in the head, and there was no gun nearby. The medics confirmed Joel's death, and his body was sent for a forensic examination. The police quickly identified the murdered man as their colleague, 32-year-old Joel Shanbrum. Joel is known to be a meek, calm person who dislikes conflict, so he seems to have no enemies. As they examined the rest of the house, they discovered that the entire upper floor had been ransacked, with drawers pulled out and clothes scattered everywhere. This suggested a robbery, leading investigators to suspect that Joel was killed during a botched burglary. While inspecting the house, the police heard a noise coming from the second-floor bathroom. They attempted to open the door, but it was locked from the inside. The officers asked for the door to be opened. From behind the door, they heard a frightened woman's voice, saying she didn't believe they were really the police. An officer then slid his badge under the door, and it was unlocked. Inside, they found 28-year-old Jennifer, the wife of Joel, and Jacob, their 3-year-old son. Both were visibly shaking with fear. The detectives took Jennifer aside for questioning. According to Jennifer, at around 7 p.m., she went to the bathroom to bathe Jacob. Then, she heard some noise downstairs, but she thought her husband was doing something. Then, as they stepped outside, they heard gunshots. Scared, she and Jacob ran back into the bathroom, closed the door, and hid to avoid being noticed. She also heard intruders moving through the house, throwing things around and talking about their loot. She realized they were thieves who had broken into the house, and her husband had accidentally encountered them, so they decided to eliminate him. She and Jacob remained hidden in the bathroom for over 2 hours until the police arrived. She was grateful that the robbers did not find them and that they were unharmed. When she asked the police about her husband, they informed her he had died. Jennifer, Jacob, and Diana were taken to the police station to provide detailed testimonies. Jennifer repeated her account, which sounded plausible and convincing. Jacob was too young to be questioned. Investigators believed the story that Joel was killed by robbers. Diana explained that when she saw Joel bleeding on the couch, she panicked and ran out of the house, driven by shock and fear. In her fright, she did not think to check on Jennifer and Jacob but just wait for the police outside. After their statements, the police allowed Jennifer, Diane, and Jacob to return home while they began investigating the robbery. At that time in the area, there had been several robberies, which supported Jennifer's story about the robbers. However, there were some inconsistencies. Previously, the robbers hadn't killed anyone. They followed a clear pattern, breaking into only empty houses late at night, which allowed them to remain unnoticed and difficult to get caught. It was odd that the robbers suddenly changed their tactics and broke into a house where many people lived, especially when everyone was home and the lights were on. Why would they attempt such a bold robbery? The Shanbrum family was considered middle class and not wealthy enough to attract the attention of thieves. Furthermore, after inspection, it was found that jewelry, money, electronics, and other valuables were not missing, even those in plain sight. There were no signs of forced entry or any evidence of strangers. No outsiders' fingerprints or DNA were found in the house. The neighbors also didn't notice anything unusual. They heard gunshots and looked out the windows but didn't see anyone leaving the house. Everything looked so strange. The next day, Jennifer was called to the police station for questioning again. She appeared very upset and repeated the same story, but this time added that she heard her husband, Joel, trying to fight back. He told the intruders that he was a police officer and they made a big mistake breaking into his house. Jennifer also mentioned that after she and Jacob ran into the bathroom, she heard 2 more shots. The detectives also interviewed Diane. They asked her to recount in detail what she had done on the day of the murder. She said she was off work that day. She left home at noon to go to the cinema, then went shopping, and had dinner at a cafe. Meanwhile, Joel, Jennifer, and Jacob were at home all evening. Then, she returned home and found Joel murdered on the couch. She noted an unusual detail: the living room blinds were closed, which was not typical for their family, because they often opened the curtains even at night. She believed the robbers had closed the blinds. The detectives found nothing suspicious in Diane's account and sent her home, they continuing their investigation. However, the police sensed something was amiss. On March 20th, the autopsy report for Joel was released. It revealed that all 3 shots were fired at close range. The first shot resulted in a superficial wound to the back of the head, the second hit him in the cheek, and the third struck him in the eye, penetrating the skull, caused death. A brain examination showed that Joel was shot with 2 types of weapons, 2 shots from a pistol and 1 from a .410 caliber weapon, which is rare. This could be a crucial clue in the investigation. Joel's time of death was determined to be between 8 and 9 o'clock in the evening, contradicting Jennifer's claim that he was shot at 7 p.m. Additionally, the medical examiner discovered that Joel was shot while asleep. During the crime scene examination, forensic experts concluded that there was little blood spatter around the body. If Joel had resisted and been shot while moving, there would have been more blood spatter. This finding contradicted Jennifer's testimony, where she claimed that she heard Joel say he was a police officer while arguing with the assailants. This was clearly a lie, causing detectives to investigate more thoroughly the Shambrum family's relationship. Investigators spoke to people close to the family and discovers that Joel and Jennifer's relationship is not as perfect as it appears. There has been a serious conflict between them for a long time. They frequently quarreled, mainly over financial issues, and some believed that they were heading towards divorce. Joel's sister mentioned that Joel, besides working as a police officer, held 2 additional jobs to support his family. He wants his wife and children to have a prosperous life. The family rented the house they are living in after their previous home was foreclosed on by the bank. Jennifer, Joel's wife, did not work outside the home. She was a housewife, taking care of their child and managing household chores. Even though Joel tried hard, but they still had financial difficulties, and Jennifer's desires for a nicer house and a more expensive car added pressure. Joel loves Jennifer very much and was willing to do anything for her. He worked 3 jobs at once to meet her needs, but he couldn't manage a 4th job. The financial strain led to arguments. Joel, in hopes of saving their marriage, suggested they try marriage counseling, but Jennifer refused. When Joel got a managerial position at an insurance company, Jennifer wanted to work there too. It was at this company that they met Matthew Fletcher, and they quickly became best friends. Over time, Joel began to suspect that Jennifer and Matthew were having an affair. Eventually, Jennifer left her job, she feeling exhausted, and returned to being a housewife, but she continued to stay in touch with Matthew. Joel suspected his wife of having an affair, which led him to consider divorce. Because of his son, he doesn't want to divorce, but by 1997, he was exhausted by their strained relationship. He confided in his sister about his decision to divorce his wife and was determined to pursue custody of his son. However, this was his last conversation with his sister. On March 23, 1998, Joel was buried. At the funeral, Jennifer and Matthew attended together and they appeared unemotional, which upset his relatives. Later, detectives discovered that she and Matthew had gone to a hotel after the funeral, taking champagne and celebrating there overnight. Detectives at the funeral, who noted she and Matthew's odd behavior, decided to follow them. The plainclothes police had been monitoring Jennifer for a long time and noticed her daily contact with Matthew. Sometimes they spent the night together, shows that they have a romantic relationship with each other. Meanwhile, Joel's relatives suspected Jennifer of being involved in her husband's murder. A week after Joel's death, Matthew was summoned for questioning at the police station. Jennifer and Matthew arrived together but denied having an affair, despite their pager messages indicating otherwise, as they exchanged numerous love messages. They were interrogated separately. Matthew was asked about his whereabouts at the time of the murder. He claimed that at 7 p.m., he visited a client's home in the San Fernando Valley to handle an insurance policy and then went to see his sister at the hospital where she worked. The police began verifying his alibi. Some parts were confirmed, but they couldn't determine where Matthew was between 8 p.m. and 10 p.m. Despite suspicions, there was no concrete evidence against Jennifer and Matthew, so they were released. Detectives continued to gather information about them. On April 27th, researchers discovered that Joel had 3 life insurance policies totaling more than $1 million. The first was for $300,000 and he had obtained it while working as a police officer. The second was for $500,000, contract was paused and then reinstated shortly before the tragedy. There was also a $314,000 policy that Joel didn't even know about. He had been insured for one of his other jobs. After her death, Jennifer immediately went to the insurance companies to request the payments. The situation became more grim, as money, especially large amounts of money, is often a motive for crime. Under the second insurance policy worth $500,000, several issues emerged. Joel initially issued this policy himself but later decided he didn't need it and canceled it. 2 months before the tragedy, the policy was reopened with a signature at an office in Atlanta, Georgia. However, his sister was convinced that he didn't do this. She believed he had intentionally suspended the policy and questioned why he would reactivate it, especially given his busy schedule with 3 jobs, leaving him little time for lunch, let alone trips to another city. The detective discovered that Joel was not in Atlanta at that time, and the signature on the documents was fake. The investigation revealed that his wife Jennifer and her lover Matthew orchestrated this scheme. They traveled to Atlanta, went to the insurance company's head office, and forged Joel's signature on the policy. This suggested that their actions were premeditated. Although the evidence was circumstantial, but investigators continued to gather more information against they. Investigators interviewed witnesses, friends, relatives, co-workers of the Shanbrum family, and thoroughly examined the case materials to find evidence to incriminate Jennifer and Matthew. 6 months after Joel's death, Jennifer received $614,000 from 2 of his life insurance policies. Although the largest policy, worth $500,000, was initially denied due to a forged signature, but it didn't seem to make Jennifer and Matthew angry. Jennifer deposited the money into Matthew's account. They began dating officially in June 1998 and soon made their relationship public. She and Matthew took a romantic trip to Mexico, got engaged, and married on Valentine's Day, February 14, 1999, in Hawaii, just 4 days before the anniversary of Joel's death. Jennifer and Matthew lived extravagantly, spent insurance money on buying a car. Joel's family was completely surprised by Jennifer's sudden change. They were confused and didn't understand why she was acting like that. There was something wrong with her behavior. She continues to enjoy life to the fullest, remarried, and prepared for motherhood. Most importantly, they couldn't believe that she had gotten away with Joel's murder, from which she had profited. Despite the passage of time, but the police still lacked sufficient evidence to charge Jennifer and Matthew. After Jennifer and Matthew's child was born, they began living a very private life. They rarely appeared in public and interacted with only a few people. In 2002, detectives revisited the case. They believed Diane was dishonest in her testimony. Over the years, her testimony was inconsistent, with her story changing multiple times. There was also a gap in time between when she found Joel and when she called 911. This left investigators uncertain about what happened in the house during that time and what she was doing. Her behavior appeared suspicious to the investigators. The detectives called Diane in for questioning again. She continued to deny any involvement in the crime. Investigators offered her immunity from prosecution. They promised that if she testified truthfully before a grand jury, she would not be charged with any crime related to Joel's death. Despite this offer, she still disagrees. Diane eventually succumbed to police pressure and confessed that her daughter Jennifer had been in a romantic relationship with Matthew. They planned to kill Joel, and Diane was sent out for a walk that day to prevent her from interfering. She felt she had no choice but to comply. Diane also revealed that Jennifer had always dreamed of wealth, but Joel couldn't give her that. When Jennifer met Matthew, he enticed her with promises of riches, and she became influenced by his ideas. Diane found him to be a manipulator who controlled Jennifer and held him responsible for everything. Jennifer was highly skilled with firearms, she frequently practiced shooting, and owned a pistol. Matthew also had a shotgun. After Joel's murder, both the pistols and the shotgun vanished and was never found. Detectives believe Jennifer fired 2 shots at Joel with her pistol, while Matthew fired the final shot with the shotgun. Based on Diana's confession and the circumstantial evidence, the police obtained an arrest warrant for Jennifer. Matthew was also arrested, and both were charged with the first-degree murder of Joel. At the time, Jennifer was pregnant with Matthew's second child, and then she gave birth in prison while awaiting trial. Her sister took custody of her 3 children. The trial began in March 2004. Matthew, confident due to his legal education, chose to represent himself, while Jennifer had a lawyer. They were tried together. Throughout the trial, Matthew and Jennifer appeared unconcerned. They were often seen talking and laughing with each other, as if they were not paying attention to the seriousness of the proceedings. They confident that the lack of physical evidence would lead to their acquittal, and they will not be held responsible for Joel's death. It was also revealed during the trial that Matthew hadn't divorced his previous wife, adding another charge against him. The prosecution is facing difficulties due to the lack of physical evidence such as DNA, fingerprints, weapons, and there were no other witnesses but Diane. They argued that Matthew and Jennifer had killed Joel in cold blood, with money as their primary motive. According to the prosecution, on the night of the murder, while Joel slept on the couch in the living room, she and Matthew executed their plan. She supposedly fired the first 2 shots with a pistol, and Matthew delivered a final shot with a shotgun. This occurred while Jacob was upstairs taking a bath. Afterward, they staged a robbery on the 2nd floor, took the weapon, left the house, and disposed of it. Jennifer then locked herself and Jacob in the bathroom until the police arrived. Matthew and Jennifer denied their guilt during the trial, claiming they had an alibi. Jennifer said she was hiding in the bathroom with Jacob, while Matthew was at a business meeting and then visited his sister. However, their alibi was not strong and was considered controversial. Then, the prosecutor highlighting key points: the house door was closed with no signs of forced entry, and since Joel was asleep, the door had to have been opened by someone already inside. This implicated Jennifer and Matthew. Diane, as part of a deal for immunity, testified against Matthew. While reviewing crime scene photos, the prosecutor noticed a bottle of water in the shower stall with the light on. He pointed this out to the jury, suggesting Jennifer had prepared to wait in the bathroom, indicating premeditation. The jury deliberated for 6 days before concluding that Jennifer and Matthew were guilty of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and insurance fraud. Both received life sentences without parole. During sentencing, Matthew and Jennifer supported each other by holding hands and never divorced. Matthew is incarcerated at the California State Penitentiary in Los Angeles, and Jennifer is at the Central California Women's Institution. Despite their imprisonment, they continue to communicate and exchange love letters. All of their appeals were rejected. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Heidi Broussard. 33-year-old Heidi Broussard worked as a waitress in a small restaurant in Buda, Texas, which has a population of around 7,000 people. She was also attending veterinary school, aspiring to become a veterinarian. Recently, she got engaged to her boyfriend, Shane Curry, after being together for 10 years. They met while working together and quickly fell in love. They has a 5-year-old son named Silas, who was born while they were still living in Louisiana. Heidi's best friend, Megan Firemuska, is also 33 years old and works as a wedding planner. The two met at a children's camp when they were 11 and have been best friends for 20 years. In early 2019, when Heidi announced she was pregnant with her second child, Megan shared that she was also expecting. Heidi was thrilled about their pregnancies and looked forward to spending time with Megan, sharing parenting experiences, and supporting each other. They began spending more time together, planning every moment of the pregnancy, bought baby clothes, cribs, and diapers, attended childbirth classes, and even went swimming together. Megan was present at the births of both of Heidi's children, including baby Margot in November 2019. They were so close that Heidi hoped their daughters would grow up to be best friends, just like them. At 7:30 a.m. on December 12, 2019, Heidi dropped off her 5-year-old son, Silas, at school. By 2 p.m., the school called her fiancé, Shane, to inform him that Heidi had not returned to pick up Silas, which was unusual since she was never late. Concerned, Shane quickly drove to the school, picked up Silas, and headed home. He expected that when he returned home, he would find Heidi and Margot at home. He thought maybe she had simply fallen asleep and forgotten to pick up Silas. However, when Shane arrived home, he was shocked to find no one in the house. He started to worry, thinking that Heidi might have taken Margot for a walk and lost track of time. He tried calling her, but she didn't answer. Then he considered that she might be with her best friend, Megan, who was about to give birth. Shane called Megan, but she said she hadn't seen Heidi that day, which was odd since they usually met daily for walks. As Shane searched the house for clues, he noticed that Heidi had left behind all of Margot's essentials, diapers, food, her wallet with money and cards, and the car keys. It suddenly hit him that something was seriously wrong. Heidi never went out with Margot without these items. Shane grew increasingly worried. Then, he called 911 around 7 p.m. to report Heidi and their newborn daughter's disappearance, Margot. The police arrived quickly and began searching for them. They examined the house and found no signs of a break-in or struggle. Everything was neatly organized. Initially, the officer suspected Shane because the husbands are often involved in such cases. However, Shane had an alibi. He had been at work all day and was cleared of suspicion. Despite this, some people still suspected him. During an interview, people scrutinized Shane's behavior, consider him a guilty person. Shane recounted that he last spoke to Heidi on the phone around 8:30 a.m. She told him she had taken Silas to school, and then, she with Margot attended a book fair. She bought several books she had been eager to read. She also purchased children's books to read to their son, Silas. She is passionate about reading books and had been building her own library at home. After their conversation, Shane returned to work, and Heidi did not contact him again. Detectives started to thoroughly investigate the house and the nearby area. They found that Heidi's car was parked in the garage. According to Shane, she exclusively drove her own car and never used taxis. This indicated that she hadn't gone far and was likely still in the vicinity. Both she and Margot have been placed on the search list, and a major search is underway in the area. While checking the surrounding area, investigators discovered a surveillance camera at a neighbor's home. They asked the neighbor to provide video footage from that camera. Then began reviewing camera video footage and interviewing nearby residents. The videos show Heidi, Margot, and Silas arriving at school at 7:30 a.m. Later, she and Margot returned home. A while later, they left the house, getting into a silver car. The video quality was poor, making it impossible to identify the car's license plate or model. This was the last sighting of Heidi alive. A neighbor reported seeing she in their apartment complex that morning, carrying a small child and approaching a parked car. A woman exited the car and greeted her. Both women then got into the car with the child and drove away. The disappearances of Heidi and her daughter, Margot, were linked to a woman. The police officer began to identify this unknown woman. Shane mentioned that the silver car matched the description of his friend's vehicle. He was convinced the woman in the car was his friend Megan, as he believed Heidi would never get into a stranger's car. Megan had a key to their home, given to her for emergencies. Detectives reached out to Megan, but she denied any involvement in the disappearance. Megan also told the police that she had not seen Heidi that day and shared some other information. She suspected Shane was involved in the situation. Heidi had previously confided in her about experiencing physical violence from he. Heidi claimed that Shane drank heavily and was abusive. Although Heidi wanted to leave him multiple times, she discovered she was pregnant for the second time and decided to give him another chance. Shane proposed, and they started planning their wedding. For a while, their relationship seemed peaceful. However, it seems that Shane has abused Heidi again. Megan showed photos of Heidi with bruises, but many people were skeptical. Upon closer examination, one photo revealed a trace from an IV drip on her arm, while another showed a small bruise that likely came from everyday activities. These are not the same as signs of domestic violence. There is no proof that Shane attacked Heidi. Police records showed no calls to Heidi's home for help. Shane denied the allegations, asserting that he loved Heidi. They were preparing for marriage, and he maintained that there had never been any violence in their relationship. Investigators searched for additional CCTV cameras in the vicinity and discovered several nearby. They collected the footage and began analyzing it. The quality of the recordings was better than expected, allowing the detective to identify a car. It was clearly determined to be Megan's car. Shane identified her. It turns out that she met Heidi that day, although she had previously denied it. She was the last person to see Heidi and Margot before they went missing. Therefore, she became the main suspect in the case. Investigators kept an eye on Megan's home. They noticed her boyfriend, Christopher, leaving and decided to follow him, but he was just going to the store to buy baby formula. The detectives approached him and showed him a photo of baby Margot. He recognized Margot and he confirmed that Megan had referred to the child as her child. Margot is in the house with her. It is clear that she is involved in this incident. The police obtained a search warrant and returned to Megan's house in Houston. When they knocked on the door, Megan opened it, holding a baby monitor in her hand and looking very worried. Inside, a baby was sleeping in a crib. Megan claimed the infant was hers and insisted she had no involvement in the disappearance of Heidi and Margot, but no one believed her. Shane recognized his daughter, Margot, by her face and clothes. The Texas Rangers detectives noticed Megan's car outside, the same silver vehicle believed to have been used by Heidi when she left. As they approached the car, they noticed the stench of a decomposing body, a smell they were familiar with. Opening the trunk revealed a horrific discovery. Heidi's body was inside a large sports bag and in poor condition. Megan was immediately arrested, and DNA testing proved that she was involved in the incident. Margot was returned to her father, Shane. Shane couldn't believe that Megan, Heidi's best friend for over 20 years, could have killed her. They had a close and trusting relationship, rarely argued, and no one thought this would happen. After Heidi went missing, Megan called Shane Daly to check on the investigation. Shane began to feel that Megan was overly fixated on Heidi, resenting the time Heidi spent with her husband and children without her. During the investigation, it became clear that Megan was actively involved in searching for Heidi. She researched Amber Alerts and the investigation online, searching for Heidi's name 162 times. An autopsy later revealed that Heidi had been strangled, leading the case to be classified as a homicide, and the investigation continued. Megan informed investigators that she had given birth at a birthing center in Woodland, north of Houston, on December 10th. Just days before Heidi's disappearance, and had brought the baby home the same day. However, when questioned, she could not recall the name of the center, making it difficult for investigators to verify her story. The police contacted all maternity hospitals in the state but found no record of a woman named Megan giving birth. It was discovered that she had not visited any medical facility and lied to her boyfriend, Christopher, about her weekly medical checkup. Investigators tracked the phone records of both Heidi and Megan, revealing that they had traveled together from Buda to Megan's house in Houston, where Heidi's body was found in Megan's car. The car had been parked near Christopher's house for an entire week, and Megan drove it daily, despite the overwhelming smell of decomposition from the body inside. How did Christopher, Megan's boyfriend, not notice the smell? He was later questioned by investigators. He explained that he and Megan had been together for about 2 years, but in March 2019, he grew tired of the relationship and decided to break up. He asked her to move out, but she refused, claiming she had nowhere else to go. Feeling sorry for her, he allowed her to stay, and they lived in separate rooms in his house with minimal communication. Christopher found it difficult to kick Megan out of the house, and when he learned that she was pregnant, he decided to give their relationship another chance. He touched her belly a few times during the pregnancy but didn't realize it was a false pregnancy. He admitted that he had never seen her belly when she was undressed, due to the tension in their relationship. But he noticed it was growing and assumed it was real. Whenever Megan had a doctor's appointment, Christopher was not there and she did not invite him. This made him feel comfortable because he did not want to go with her. He was also away during the birth and only learned that Megan had given birth to a daughter while walking on the beach. When he returned home and saw her holding a baby, Megan claimed the birth went smoothly and that she hadn't seen a doctor. Her family video called her and remarked that she looked happy with the baby. They had visited Megan a few days before the birth and thought she looked pregnant. She has a big belly. In reality, Megan had never been pregnant, she had been pretending the entire time. Megan faked her pregnancy, deceiving everyone, including her boyfriend Christopher. This was part of a troubling scheme to take Heidi's daughter, Margot. This plan was devised by her to keep her boyfriend. When Christopher learned the truth, he broke up with her and moved in with his mother for a while because he was being hounded by the press and couldn't live in peace. He was not charged with any crime, as police were confident he had no knowledge of Megan's intentions. He was only involved in the case as a witness. Megan grew up in a family of 9 siblings, and her youngest brother was only 9 years old. She always dreamed of having many children and a big family. But she cannot get pregnant. Her relationship with her boyfriend Christopher also quickly ended. Overwhelmed by despair, she developed a horrific plan. When she learned that Heidi was pregnant, she is extremely jealous of Heidi and dreams of being pregnant. She decided that Heidi's baby would be the solution to her problem. She tricked Heidi into getting into her car, then drove them far from home. Once there, she attacked and strangled Heidi, placing Heidi's body in the trunk before returning home. As the search for Heidi began, Megan pretends to be sad because his best friend is missing. She even contacted multiple local TV stations, urging them to cover the story, so that no one would think she was involved. Megan was later charged with kidnapping Heidi and Margot, as well as murder, and she faced the death penalty. It was revealed that Megan had a prior conviction for theft. The charges indicated that she had originally planned not only to kidnap Margot but also to murder Heidi to accomplish this. She realized that Heidi would not willingly give up her child and was prepared to commit murder to get what she wanted. According to Megan, Heidi's second pregnancy was unexpected, and at the time, her financial situation was challenging. Initially, she considered terminating the pregnancy. Megan asked her not to do this, and even asked she to give Megan's the baby, but no one took Megan's words seriously. They thought she was joking. This might have been when Megan devised her plan. Ultimately, Heidi decided against terminating the pregnancy, and she and Shane chose to keep the child. However, Shane feels confused and doesn't know how to manage life with two children. Shane suspected that someone else was involved in the case. For at that time, Heidi was bigger and stronger than Megan, and Megan wouldn't have been able to handle everything on her own. He thought someone must have assisted Megan with the murder. He also did not understand how Megan could have stuffed Heidi's body into a bag and put it in the trunk of the car by himself. Heidi's family also suspects that Megan had help, but they don't think it was Christopher, as he wanted to break up with her. They believe Megan may have manipulated him into staying because of the child, suggesting he became a victim of her deception. A witness who claimed to have seen someone else in the car with Megan and Heidi, but this person did not see their face. Megan was in the front passenger seat, Heidi was in the back, and a stranger was driving. However, Shane never confirmed this information. Megan told Heidi and Shane that she had given birth to a girl on December 8th, but she did not show the baby to anyone, not even Heidi. Megan also did not share pictures of her newborn daughter on social media and very secretive about it. It is rumored that she had a nightmare about someone kidnapping her child, which frightened her and she decided not to show the baby to anyone. Before she disappeared, Heidi shared her worries with Shane about Megan. She found it strange that Megan didn't invite her family, although she invited Megan to attend the birth twice. She wanted to be with Megan at this crucial moment, and she felt offended by Megan's choice to keep it private. Megan explained that she was superstitious and preferred not to share the moment with others. Additionally, Shane recalled another odd incident. When Heidi was discharged from the hospital after giving birth, Megan, who was supposedly 37 weeks pregnant, can't leave the baby and constantly asks to hold the baby in her arms. She was very concerned about the child, which made many people suspicious, but at that time no one seemed to notice. The reasons behind Megan leaving Heidi's body in the trunk of her car instead of hiding it elsewhere remain unclear. In court, Megan continued to insist that the child Margot was hers. During a psychiatric evaluation, she was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and post-traumatic stress disorder. However, she was ultimately deemed sane and competent to stand trial. Throughout the trial, the evidence overwhelmingly pointed to her guilt, indicating that she had carefully planned the murder over several months. Following her lawyer's advice, Megan agreed to a plea bargain with the prosecution in order to receive a lighter sentence. To avoid the death penalty, she gave up her right to appeal. Heidi's family agreed to the decision to avoid protracted legal battles. Megan Fire-Muska was sentenced to 55 years in prison without the possibility of parole. Hello again, true crime fans, we've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Lauren McCluskey. Since she was a child, Lauren McCluskey has been a very talented person. She dances, sings, and is an excellent track and field athlete. She has won many medals and awards. Eventually, she received an offer from the University of Utah and left her hometown of Pullman, Washington, to start a new life in Salt Lake City. At the university, she participates in athletics competitions, including the 100-meter dash, hurdles, high jump, shot put, long jump, javelin throw, and 800-meter run. Her talent made her one of the standout athletes on the university team. Besides, she also studies well in the communication department and makes friends with many people. However, in September 2018, her life took a tragic turn. On a Friday evening, Lauren and her friends decided to go dancing and have drinks at a small club near the University of Utah. During the evening, a man caught her attention. As the night wound down, he introduced himself as Sean Phillips, saying he worked as a security guard at the club and was also a student at Salt Lake Community College. He was 28 years old. Despite their age difference, but they quickly found common ground. His charm and interest in her drew her in, and they exchanged phone numbers, planning to meet again the following day to spend more time together. Lauren felt very happy to meet Sean. She even called her mother, Jill McCluskey, to tell her about him. Sean gives her flowers at dinner, tries to be charming and gently proposes. He was tall, muscular, handsome, and very sociable guy. He quickly found common ground with Lauren, an energetic and friendly girl. He often stayed overnight in her dorm room, and she even let him borrow her car. However, some concerning behaviors began to surface. Initially, Sean encouraged Lauren to invite her friends to their gatherings, but then, he started telling her how to dress, usually in a t-shirt and jeans. When she was with her friends, he would constantly call, asking where she was, who she was with, and when she would return. If she didn't respond immediately, he would become upset. Lauren explained to friends that Sean's behavior stemmed from insecurities caused by past relationships and believed that over time, this would improve. Sean begins to explain to Lauren the importance of being careful around others and always being prepared for unfortunate situations that may arise. He bought her a can of pepper spray and insisted she carry it everywhere. He also took her to a shooting range and asked her to purchase a gun for him. Around this time, Lauren cut off all communication with her friends and spent all her time outside of school with Sean, focusing solely on training with him. Concerned, her friends reached out to the dorm staff where she lived. The staff, already uneasy about Sean's frequent presence in the dorms, grew even more alarmed when they discovered that he was tracking Lauren's movements on campus, monitoring her comings and goings. It became evident that he was not just overly jealous but was attempting to control and manipulate Lauren's life. Something was clearly wrong. As it turned out, Sean was not who he had introduced himself to be. One day, Lauren accidentally saw a photo of his ID card and learned the truth. Sean Phillips was not a 28-year-old college student or the kind, trustworthy person he pretended to be. His real name was Melvin Sean Rowland, and in fact he is 38 years old, born in 1981. He was skilled at fabricating stories and concealing his true identity. Investigators later uncovered several women who had been deceived by his lies in different ways. Unknowingly, Lauren had become one of his victims. After seeing his ID card, she begins to realize the truth about him. Melvin's true identity came to light on October 5th when Lauren returned to her home in Pullman, Washington. She confided in a friend, sharing everything that had happened. The friend suggested searching online for information about Melvin Sean Rowland. The search revealed alarming details. Melvin was a sex offender. In 2004, he was convicted of luring a minor and attempting to forcibly harass her. He spent 9 years in state prison and was released on parole in September 2013. Realizing the truth, Lauren knew she had to end the relationship with him. Lauren returns to college in Utah and makes plans to break up with Melvin. On October 9th, she called and asked him to come over. When he arrived, the planned breakup didn't happen, and he stayed the night in Lauren's room. She later told her friends that Melvin had apologized for lying about himself and explained an incident involving a false age claim by a girl at a fraternity party. He insisted that the other allegations against him were untrue. Lauren's friends were doubtful of his story and urged her to end the relationship, which she did the following day. Afterward, Lauren called her mother to explain what had happened. She mentioned that she planned to meet Melvin that evening to get her car back. Her mother, Jill, grew very concerned about the situation. Worrying about her daughter's safety, Jill contacted campus police to inform them and asked them to keep an eye on Lauren while she got her car back. Jill felt uneasy and deeply anxious. Jill dreading the idea of Melvin, who seemed to bring trouble into Lauren's life, being anywhere near she. Lauren was able to pick up her car without any issues, and both she and Melvin carried on with their lives. After that, she had a short period of peace. She focused on her studies and began to rebuild her routine. However, this peace is soon broken by messages sent from unknown phone numbers, all referencing Melvin. Concerned, she contacted the police, leaving a message with the operator, but no one got back to her that day. Then a message arrived from Melvin's number, saying he was fine, but hinting that something strange was happening. Soon after, messages from anonymous numbers continued to arrive, affirmed that they were in possession of sensitive photos of Lauren and Melvin. The sender demanded $10,000, threatening to release the photos online if they do not receive the money. On the morning of October 13th, Melvin emailed Lauren, revealing that he was also being blackmailed. He advised her to pay the money, so she sent $10,000 to the unknown blackmailer. However, she began to suspect that Melvin himself might be behind the blackmail rather than an unknown party. Feeling insecure, she contacted the University of Utah police. The dispatcher forwarded her complaint to Miguel Dasso, a University of Utah police officer. Wanting to address the situation directly, Lauren and her friend walked across campus to speak with the officer in person. When they arrived, they met with the police and told the whole story, including giving Melvin's name and that he was a sex offender. Police believe this was a hoax and that Lauren may have made up the story about the death threat. Lauren and her friend believed that they had taken the necessary steps and that the problem would soon be resolved. Unfortunately, almost no action was taken. Officer Miguel received copies of the messages and images involved, even adding one of the photos to his personal collection. He later bragged to another officer that he could now view it whenever he wanted. Lauren received no follow-up from the university police despite her repeated calls to the station, during which she explained to the dispatcher that she was being blackmailed again. In October, near Lauren's dorm, Melvin was spotted loitering in the parking lot, wearing a suit. About 45 minutes later, she returned to her dorm after track practice. At the time, no one knew who Melvin was. She entered the dorm and went upstairs. Shortly afterward, Melvin, now dressed as Deadpool, approached the dorm door. He later claimed he knew Lauren had called the police, leading her to suspect that someone at the police department had informed him about the situation. Lauren had forgotten that a few weeks ago, she had used Melvin's phone to log in and check her email. This gave him access to her communications with the police, friends, and family without her realizing it. She contacted the Salt Lake City police, hoping they could connect her with another department for assistance. However, under the jurisdictional rules, police said they were not of much help, as their jurisdiction was limited to campus. This also prevents Officer Miguel from taking action outside of campus. Additionally, some have suggested that Lauren's assumption that someone in the police department had leaked information to Melvin may make her paranoid. Phone records revealed that she called both police departments multiple times over several days, desperately seeking a solution. On October 22nd, the situation took a dire turn. CCTV footage showed Melvin leaving his apartment at 6 a.m. He rented a car from his neighbor and drove to the parking lot in front of Lauren's dorm, arriving at 9 a.m. He walked toward the building just as she was leaving her dorm. Around that time, she received a text message, supposedly from Deputy Chief McLennan of the University Police, asking her to come to the station to review evidence. Sensing something was off, she ignored the message and instead went to meet with a counselor, who had been helping her deal with the breakup and its aftermath. At that time, Melvin was in the same building as Lauren. He was carrying a small suitcase. He was looking for she but couldn't find her, so he went to her dorm instead. There, he managed to gain access. Once inside, he spoke with a group of 4 students. Over time, 3 of them left, leaving 1 student behind. The remaining student later told police that Melvin asked if he wanted to see what was inside the suitcase. Inside was a .40 caliber Beretta pistol and a full magazine. He even let the student handle the gun before leaving. Meanwhile, Lauren had finished her evening class and was preparing to return to her dorm. It had been a difficult week, so she decided to call her parents and take a short walk across campus while talking to them. At the same time, Melvin left the dorm, intending to intercept her on her usual route back. As Lauren walked, she told her parents about her day, and they listened closely. Suddenly, they heard her scream as Melvin began chasing her. Her father, Matthew, immediately called 911. Melvin grabbed Lauren, forced her into the car with a gun and pushed her into the back seat. Then, he shooting her 7 times at close range. After opening fire, he drove through the parking lot, crossed the bridge and continued straight to the nearest subway station in Salt Lake. There, he waited calmly at a bus stop and made a phone call, having already arranged for someone to pick him up. A woman eventually arrived, and he got into her car. The 2 went out for dinner and took a walk around a nearby building, attempting to appear as though they were casually spending time together, likely to create an alibi for the time of the murder. Meanwhile, police began searching the area. This side, Lauren's parents are dying to know what's going on with their daughter. Students and volunteers began searching west of a North Medical Tower. A team of 6 officers, along with a police dog, joined the search, moving north. Eventually, they discovered Lauren's body inside a silver vehicle. Police cordoned off the crime scene and initiated a nationwide manhunt for Melvin. Authorities had been repeatedly warned that he posed a danger to Lauren, but by the time they acted, it was too late. Now, their only focus was capturing her killer, Melvin. At this time, Melvin was still on the run. He rushed into Trinity Church in Salt Lake City to seek refuge. Police followed him into the building. They also knew that he had weapons and ready to fight back. They searched the church room by room until a single gunshot rang out. Melvin ended his life. When officers found him, the manhunt ended. However, the tragedy was far from over. Lauren, an innocent young woman, was murdered, causing people to demand clarity on the matter. Why had no one taken even the simplest measures to prevent this? How could someone who had pleaded for help and provided all the necessary information be so blatantly ignored? The university had failed to conduct even a basic background check on Melvin. Why hadn't they done so? If they had looked into his history and contacted his probation officer, he will be sent back to prison soon. He has been incarcerated for violating the terms of his probation and has a history of making provocative statements during his parole hearings. When reporters asked Melvin's parole officer if he could have been sent back to prison, the officer made it clear Melvin would have been arrested immediately if the police department informed them of his actions. Officer Miguel Dasso has left the University of Utah Police Force to join the Logan Police Department. However, after his actions came to light, he was promptly fired. Under state obscenity laws, he faces charges for mishandling evidence and showing it to another officer. These charges were later dropped because a data analysis of his phone showed insufficient evidence. Although the charges were dismissed, his actions caused significant harm. What is particularly troubling is that the district attorney has decided not to proceed with the case against him. The case also raises questions about where Melvin got the gun he used. As a parolee and convicted felon, he was legally prohibited from purchasing or possessing a firearm. Investigations revealed that he acquired the gun through a friend, who was also a convicted felon. The friend had his girlfriend purchase the gun on Melvin's behalf. If the gun had not been handed to he, Lauren would likely still be alive. The McCluskey family sued the University of Utah and its police force, accusing them of being irresponsible and incompetent in handling Lauren's request for help. The lawsuits, initially seeking $56 million, were resolved through settlements. Hello, crime enthusiasts. Are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Maria Luisa. Maria Luisa was born on May 29, 1977, in La Fortuna, San Carlos, in Alajuela, Costa Rica. She was the youngest of 5 children in a humble family. From an early age, she was ambitious and determined. She wanted to help people and dreamed of becoming a doctor, telling herself she would be the first in her family to get a college degree. During her school years, she excelled in chemistry and biology, her favorite subjects. After graduating in 1994, she was accepted into the country's most prestigious medical school, located in San Jose. As a student, Maria moved to the capital and lived there for the rest of her life. However, she still maintains a close relationship with her family, visiting and get in touch with them. In 2000, after earning her degree, Maria began working as an anesthesiologist at one of the largest medical centers in the capital. She quickly excelled in her career, continuously learning and honing her skills. By 2015, she had risen to become the head of the anesthesiology and recovery therapy department. She was highly respected and admired by her colleagues, become a famous doctor. However, to achieve success, Maria had to trade in her personal life. For many years, she was alone, fully dedicated to her work. In 2017, at the age of 40, she started dating a doctor at the same hospital, though he worked in a different department. She believed he was her true love and someone with whom she could build a happy family. Unfortunately, at the start of 2020, their relationship ended, and he started dating a younger co-worker. The breakup was a painful experience for Maria. She suffered from severe depression and focused only on work for months, barely paying attention to the world around her. Her only source of comfort was her small dog, Mafalda, she loved and cared for as if he were her child. In July 2020, Maria felt like she needed some time off and change your living environment to relax your mind. She decided to visit the coast and stay at a small, cozy hotel called La Mansion Inn, located in the picturesque Punta Arenas region. Before, this resort attracted tourists from around the world, but now this place is very deserted. At the hotel, only a few rooms were occupied, which provided the peace and quiet Maria was seeking. She planned to spend the weekend there and return home on Monday, bringing her beloved dog Mafalda along with her. Maria stayed in a room on the ground floor, has a second door leading to a private yard. These rooms are designed for guests with pets, so it can go outside and relieve themselves in a designated area. At the time, all the other rooms with courtyard access were unoccupied. On July 18, Maria arrived, left her belongings in her room, and went to the beach. The following day was equally uneventful. She walked along the shore, relaxed in the sun, had dinner at a restaurant, and returned to her room. That evening, she called her mother, and they talked for about 30 minutes. During the call, Maria remarked on how empty the hotel felt, with only a handful of staff members. She intended to check out the next morning, after breakfast, but she never did. On the morning of July 20, Maria did not come down for breakfast. The hotel staff noticed her absence, as there were very few guests, but assumed she was simply sleeping. However, when checkout time arrived, and she still hadn't appeared, they decided to check her room. 2 staff members knocked on her door but received no response. They could hear her dog barking inside, which confirmed she was there. Despite repeatedly knocking and calling her name, the only sound was the dog's barking. Concerned, they went to the courtyard to see if they could access her room from another entrance. They found the second door unlocked and decided to go inside to see what was going on. As soon as they stepped inside, they noticed brownish stains on the floor, resembling dried blood. On the bed, they discovered a body wrapped in a sheet. The staff immediately contacted emergency services and informed hotel management. Unfortunately, when paramedics arrived, they confirmed that Maria was dead. She had been killed several hours before her body was discovered. The scene was deeply unsettling, from the condition of the room to the circumstances surrounding her death. Maria's body showed multiple cuts, bruises, and bite marks inflicted by different individuals. Defensive wounds on her hands indicated she had fought back desperately. The cause of death was determined to be mechanical asphyxia and a broken neck. She had been strangled with such force that her cervical vertebrae were fractured. The autopsy confirmed that Maria had been sexually assaulted before her death. Beside her bed, there was a bottle of mineral water, an opened bottle of expensive wine, and 2 glasses. According to hotel staff, she had ordered these items the previous night, but she was alone at the time. Maria's keycard records show that after she received the items, she did not leave the room and no one entered. However, the glass door leading to the courtyard did not require a key, which could have allowed the attacker to gain access. The hotel had several security cameras that could have helped shed some light on the matter, but it turned out they had all been out of service for months. The hotel management explained that they had cut costs by shutting off the cameras. Forensic experts analyzed the bite marks on Maria's body for DNA, expecting to find the attacker's saliva. However, the results were shocking. The saliva belonged to Maria herself. Since the bite marks were located on her face, neck, and chest, areas she could not have reached herself, investigators deduced that the attacker had deliberately placed her saliva on the wounds to conceal their own DNA. Another disturbing detail revealed by the pathologist was that Maria's body had been thoroughly cleaned after her death. This indicated that after torturing, strangling, and killing her, the attackers washed her body in the bathroom, placed her back on the bed, contaminated the bite marks with her saliva, and wrapped her body in a sheet. Because the hotel's cameras were not working and the grounds were very deserted, no witnesses could be identified. Both guests and hotel staff reported that they did not see anything unusual, and they did not see any strangers appearing on the premises. The brutal murder of Maria, a famous anesthesiologist, quickly became the focus of national attention, causing great public outrage. Police are under pressure to investigate and find the culprit who committed the brutal act against an innocent woman. When asked if Maria might have had a brief romance during the trip, her family firmly denied it. She was still heartbroken over a recent breakup and had been hoping for reconciliation. Regarding the 2 glasses found in the room, Maria's sister explained that she always used 2 glasses, one for wine and one for water. Forensic analysis confirmed this explanation, as only Maria's fingerprints and lip marks were found on the glasses. During their interview with the police, her mother suddenly remembered something from her daughter's last phone call. Maria had mentioned chatting with a man who worked at the hotel during lunch. She said he had asked her why she was traveling alone and how long she planned to stay. This detail provided detectives with their first suspect to investigate. The employee in question was 38 years old, Teodoro Herrera, the son of a close friend of the hotel owner, Harry Bodan. In fact, thanks to his father's connection with Harry, he got the job at the hotel. He worked as a bartender and also ran personal errands for Harry. During his interview with the police, he behaved oddly. He was extremely nervous. He claimed that he did not know Maria and did not remember ever speaking to her. Detectives noticed fresh scratches on Teodoro's cheeks and neck, for which he couldn't provide a clear explanation. When asked to remove his shirt, similar scratches were found on his chest and shoulders. Investigators suspected these marks were left by Maria as she fought for her life, but they needed forensic confirmation. He was arrested and held for 6 months while the investigation continued. Forensic analysis later confirmed that blood and skin particles from Teodoro were found under Maria's nails. However, the bite marks on her body did not match his dental impressions. The investigation then shifted focus to a 36-year-old man named Luis Carlos Miranda. He was not a regular guest or employee at La Mansion Inn, but he was a friend of the hotel owner, Harry, and often stayed there for free. One of the bite marks on Maria's body was potentially linked to he, though it wasn't conclusive. Still, the police arrested him as a second suspect and detained him for 6 months, just like Teodoro. He also denied ever meeting Maria or having any interaction with her. About 10 days after the murder, a third suspect was arrested, Harry Baudin, the 69-year-old hotel owner. Harry, a businessman of Dutch origin, was well connected with politicians. He owned multiple properties across different countries. His arrest was prompted by a bite mark on Maria's body that matched his dental impressions. Investigators also discovered that about 6 months before the murder, he had undergone surgery at the hospital where Maria worked. Although he claimed he had never met her, police suspected he might have noticed her during his hospital stay, obtained her contact information, and lured her to his hotel. Initially, Harry was placed under house arrest due to his age and health problems. However, when he moved to a new residence without informing the authorities, he was taken into custody over concerns he might attempt to flee the country. Another individual connected to the case was Harry's husband, Yater Daniel Abanda. However, no evidence was found to convict him. He denied any involvement, stating that Harry had been unwell that night and had not left their room. After reviewing the autopsy and forensic results, investigators determined that there were 3 attackers involved. There were no signs of ropes or restraints used to hold down Maria, but all her limbs displayed bruises consistent with being pinned by hands. Fabric fibers and a thread were discovered inside her mouth, indicating she had been gagged. This likely explains why none of the other guests or staff heard her screams, although her injuries and signs of torture showed that she must have been desperately calling for help. On Maria's phone, found in her room, there were messages to her sister in which she praised the hotel. She described it as beautiful, cozy, and quiet, complimenting the staff for being attentive. She also mentioned spending the evening chatting and dancing at the bar with the man who served coffee, identified as Teodoro. From the start, Teodoro was the main suspect. He was the only suspect of the 3 with visible scratches, and forensic evidence revealed his skin and blood under Maria's fingernails. Additionally, his DNA was found on her body, despite his attempts to wash it off. However, dental cast comparisons showed that his teeth did not match the bite marks on her skin. After returning to her room, Maria stayed in her room all evening and didn't allow anyone inside. Investigators suspected the attackers entered through the door leading to the courtyard. It's possible she left the door unlocked for her dog to go outside. Since the neighboring rooms were unoccupied, no one would have noticed. Once inside, the attackers acted quickly. They struck Maria on the head, rendering her unconscious, gagged her, and then subjected her to hours of torture and assault. Afterward, they strangled her with such force that her neck was broken. They then washed her body in the bathroom, placed it on the bed, and wrapped it in a sheet, dirtying the bite wound with her saliva. During the trial, all 3 suspects, Teodoro, Harry, and Luis, denied involvement, claiming they were asleep in their rooms that night. However, no witnesses could corroborate their alibis. Investigators found disturbing text messages on their phones in which they shared frightening thoughts. The day before the crime, they even discussed a guest who was alone. The trial is set for September 2022, more than 2 years after the murder. Harry, 71, had to appear in court in a wheelchair because of worsening knee problems that made it difficult for him to walk. The prosecution immediately had difficulty proving Harry and Luis's involvement in the crime. The evidence against them was largely circumstantial, consisting of text messages and dental impressions. The defense argued that the bite marks should be dismissed as evidence because they did not perfectly match their dental records. To support this argument, Harry's lawyer hired an orthodontist from Madrid to testify. After analyzing the bite marks on Maria's body, orthodontists concluded that they were insufficient as evidence and could not definitively establish a link between Harry, Luis, and the crime. However, after orthodontist returned to Spain the following day, the prosecution questioned his credentials. Further investigation confirmed that he did not have a valid certificate and was merely a self-proclaimed expert. As a result, his testimony was discredited and thrown out. Despite this, the prosecution was determined to prove a connection between Harry, Luis, and the case. They argued that the brutal, calculated nature of the assault and murder indicated the involvement of at least 3 people. The defense denied this claim, insisting that a healthy individual was perfectly capable of performing the act without assistance. The verdict was delivered with clear and undeniable evidence, all pointing to Teodoro Herrera as the culprit. His DNA was found in Maria's body, his skin cells appeared under her fingernails, and her blood was discovered both on the outside and inside of his shoes. The shoe prints matched those found at the entrance of her room and near the bed. Consequently, he was convicted on all charges and sentenced to 50 years in prison without the possibility of parole. At 40 years old, this effectively amounted to a life sentence. He admitted to being intimate with Maria that night, but claimed it was consensual and insisted someone else must have killed her after he left. In contrast, there was insufficient evidence against Harry and Luis. Apart from bite marks and text messages, nothing concrete linked them to the crime. As a result, they were acquitted and released in March 2023. However, in September of the same year, an appeals court revisited the case after a complaint from Maria's family and ordered it to be reopened. By then, Harry and Luis had already fled Costa Rica, leaving the country immediately after their release. They are currently living in the Netherlands, and even if the trial is reopened and they are found guilty, they will not face any consequences because the Netherlands and Costa Rica do not have an extradition treaty, even though this is a very serious crime.